Chapter 1695. It was a stinky underground sewer. There was dirty black mud everywhere, the smell was disgusting, it was similar to the rotten smell of animal corpses, and the gloomy environment was like the legendary underworld. Boom boom boom. The ground trembled, and many cracks appeared on the solid floor. A huge hole appeared, and the bright sunlight shone in. Those two guys really know how to choose the place. There was a sound wave in the quiet atmosphere, followed by Saber's light voice. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about how they survived here. Dustless touched his chin and looked curious. He sniffed slightly, the rotten smell made it difficult to breathe. That makes sense. Saber nodded, Castor and his master could survive in such a harsh environment. Castor and his master were amazing. But, Dustless's right eye changed, and a mysterious blue and white eye appeared. He could see through the boundless darkness, and the scene in the distance could be seen at a glance. According to Ceci's information, this seems to be the location of Castor's magic workshop. There should be a big harvest. Saber said with an expectant tone. There is a big harvest, but the result may be the opposite of what you think. Dustless looked at Saber with a deep look, then he shouted, "Fire release, great fireball technique." Boom boom boom. The huge fireball rushed out, and the originally dark and strange environment was instantly lit up, and the shocking scene was also reflected in Saber's eyes. Damn it, how can he do this kind of thing? Castor, that bastard, why didn't his master restrain that crazy guy? Saber clenched her fist and cursed, her voice was trembling. Looking around, there were countless children's corpses. You let Castor's master restrain him. Saber, with all due respect, Yu Xinglong Jijia's level of perversion is no worse than Castor's. They are very close, just like lovers. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew that both of them were perverted murderers. Ouch! A hoarse roar suddenly rang out, accompanied by a violent tremor. In that instant, the entire Dongmu city trembled slightly. Even though the fluctuations were minuscule, Dustless still managed to catch them. Follow me, Castor is on the sea. Dustless flashed and appeared in front of Saber in the next second. Ignoring her shocked expression, he grabbed her slender waist and leaped into the air. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Saber regained her senses, she found herself in the sky with Dustless. Saber, who was being hugged by Dustless, blushed slightly. Her body temperature was rising rapidly, and her cheeks were burning hot. She clutched the corner of her shirt tightly, looking as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. She looked extremely nervous and awkward. This is the first time I've been carried in the air by someone. It feels pretty good. Saber lowered his head and looked at the entire Dongmu city. The boundless city was in his eyes, and the light gathered into a large area. The scenery was so beautiful that he felt a little infatuated. By the way, which era are you from? Dustless. And your name is very strange. It seems that there is no hero that matches your identity. In addition, there is another important question. Saber stared at the face in front of her seriously and said, some of your abilities don't seem to belong to a hero. No matter what kind of heroic spirit it was, there was one thing that could be confirmed. He had once appeared in the track of history. As for Wu Chen, it was as if he had appeared out of thin air. There was no information to be found, not even the most basic clues. Which era are you from? Actually, I don't know myself. Dustless gave a ridiculous answer, which made Saber roll her eyes. I'm telling the truth. Dustless smiled bitterly. After all, he came from another dimension. Only God knew how many years ago he came from. Ow ow ow. Dustless flew farther and farther, gradually approaching the answer. Purple light surged on the surface of the sea, and the beast's roar was getting closer. In a trance, he could see an extremely exaggerated black shadow. I never expected the two of us to be the last to arrive. Even the Hero King is so diligent. After passing through the layers of light, Dustless and Saber landed at the harbor. They looked at the super monster and frowned at the same time. Humph, you sure know how to put on airs. The two of you are the slowest. An unruly voice sounded from the sky. Dustless and Saber looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. They did not need to look to know that the owner of the voice was the problematic child, Gilgamesh. Lancer doesn't seem to be here. The Conqueror King, Iskandar, rode on the divine might wheel. Although it was not as dazzling as Gilgamesh, it looked quite domineering on the surface. Swoosh 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 swoosh. Looking up, in the sky, there was an aircraft with a golden hull inlaid with unknown emeralds flying in the sky. The person who was operating it was the arrogant Hero King, Gilgamesh. Lancer and his master were killed. Naturally, they won't come. Gilgamesh said indifferently. There was no fluctuation in his tone, as if he was talking about insects. This upstart's temperament hasn't changed. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Everyone received the order to eliminate Castor. Whoever killed Castor first would be the winner and could get a command seal from the church. However, according to Dustless's guess, this must be a lie. Yen Fingley was already dead. Ow ow ow. The giant sea monster screamed crazily. It exposed its saw-like teeth and its countless tentacles that flapped its wings and tried to attack Gilgamesh in the sky. However, the distance was too high, and the sea monster couldn't attack Gilgamesh. Bastard, you want to touch the glory of this king? Go to hell and repent. The void behind Gilgamesh rippled, and countless divine weapons flashed. When they were about to attack the sea monster summoned by Kshtar, there was a sudden change. Ow ow ow. An even more ferocious voice suddenly sounded. A monster wearing black armor and a helmet with red light flashed. He was standing on a fighter jet and had launched 2 missiles while Gilgamesh and the sea demon were fighting. Boom boom boom. The aircraft driven by Gilgamesh suffered heavy damage and splashed a huge fireball, which was particularly spectacular. TSK, why did the Hero King do this? Dustless shook his head when he saw it. He clearly saw that Gilgamesh fell into the black stinky sea. He was afraid that this guy's lungs were about to explode. Chapter 1696. Woo woo woo. The monster's gigantic mouth emitted a hiss as it spewed out a viscous liquid that resembled ink. The unlucky Hero King had just crawled out of the water when he was attacked by the mysterious ink. His body stank as it emanated a nauseating stench. Oh, it's really embarrassing. Is it appropriate for the ancient king to fall into such a miserable state? Dustless laughed. Archer, if you can't beat Castor and Berserker, you can kowtow and beg me. Beg me? Hearing Dustless's harsh laughter, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately glared at him and gnashed his teeth. He couldn't wait to swallow Dustless alive. Boom! Suddenly, the disgusting sea monster waved its tentacles and attacked Dustless and others. At the same time, they could hear, Jean d'Arc, Jean d'Arc. Damn God! Needless to say, the culprit must be Castor, that perverted monster. Overconfident, and I repeat for the last time, I am not the Jean d'Arc you said. Saber snorted, holding her sword with both hands. Excalibur shot out a huge golden light, and a huge slash emerged. Whoosh! The incoming tentacles collapsed in an instant, destroyed by the huge light. The tentacles that were dancing wildly also stopped. At first glance, everything had returned to its original tranquility. It doesn't seem to be anything special. Saber was full of confidence. Gulp. However, the good times didn't last long. The tentacles that were cut off grew new tentacles again, and they were thicker and bigger than before. This is... Saber frowned slightly. and when she was about to attack with her sword, Dustless stopped her. This is the sea monster summoned by Castor's noble phantasm. The only way to break it is to use a decisive force to defeat it. Otherwise, this sea monster can regenerate infinitely. Infinite regeneration. Saber frowned when she heard this. Castor was unexpectedly difficult to deal with. Infinite regeneration, this was the first time she encountered such a tricky ability. Oh, golden glitter, as long as you use EA, you can crush this monster. That command seal is also your master, Inaka Toshimori's. Dustless said with a smile. What's wrong with this guy's eyes? Gilgamesh met Dustless's gaze and felt displeased in his heart. He had a feeling that all his secrets had been seen through and seen through. He was fuming with anger. How can this king's supreme artifact be used to deal with this kind of garbage? Don't joke, I won't take back what I threw. Hero King Gilgamesh looked arrogant, and he disdained to attack Castor. It's just a bunch of toys. If you throw them away, so be it. Why do you care? Dustless asked calmly. At the same time, a large amount of light swept out from behind him. The golden halo covered the entire sky, and thousands of divine weapons stood out. Gulp. The heroic spirits and the masters were all shocked, looking at the light above Dustless's head. Looking closely, there were more than thousands of noble artifacts. That damned imposter. Seeing this, Hero King Gilgamesh wanted to cry. He found that the way others looked at him had changed, as if the ability of the Gate of Babylon was stolen by him from Dustless. If this guy really has the same ability as me, then he can definitely use that. Gilgamesh's old face was incomparably gloomy. His own unique move had been played by someone else so skillfully. He felt particularly uncomfortable in his heart. However, the next scene also confirmed Gilgamesh's conjecture. Buzz, suddenly, a dazzling light swept out of the void, and a strange spiral sword slowly floated out of it. At the moment when the big sword flashed, the void was filled with an indescribable ominous feeling. Even Dustless had not made a move, the sky had already broken. Is this your real noble artifact? Dustless. Saber stared at the ominous blade, and she also felt an unprecedented destructive power and a huge sense of oppression. This strange sword was even more powerful than her Excalibur. Noble artifact. Kind of. The star of creation, Enrich, has the ability to break the world. Staring at the huge sea monster in the distance, its horrible shadow flashed and kept coming to the shore, intending to destroy the entire Domu city. Castor. You and Joan of Arc will meet again in the next life. Glancing at the sea monster, Dustless indifferently waved a huge light, annihilate him, Boom. The huge slash whistled out, and in an instant, the vast sea was split open, and the slash rushed straight to Satyr. Whoosh! The sharp slash made a horrifying sound as it tore through the air, causing people to feel dizzy. Even the ordinary people who rushed over after hearing the sound were unable to withstand the powerful pressure and had their eardrums shattered. Damn, it's so strong. Castor, who was hiding in the huge sea monster, looked at the light of destruction, and his back was cold, and he quickly controlled countless tentacles to block it. Poochie. However, the dying struggle was useless, the tentacles were crushed by the strong hurricane and turned into a drizzle, powerlessly sprinkling on the sea. Boom! The dazzling slash finally pierced through Satyr, destroying it in one move. Its huge body instantly exploded. Chapter 1697. Boom boom boom. Castor's huge body exploded. It was spectacular. The whole sky was occupied by the fragmented body fragments, slowly falling. It was no different from a fine drizzle. It's that simple. Sarvant, who recovered from the shock, looked at the duo of Dustless and Saber with a speechless face. Of course, the main focus of their attention was still the calm Dustless. Especially when the hero king was Gilgamesh. When this fellow saw Dustless take out an EA that was identical to his eyeballs nearly popped out. Hey, hey, hey. Golden Glitter Archer over there, I have something to ask you. Conqueror King Iskandar drove the Wheel of Divine Power to land next to Hero King Gilgamesh and asked, "How did you steal that guy's ability? You bastard, get away from this king." Gilgamesh was about to explode when he heard that. Gate of Babylon was his unique ability. Now, Dustless could use it inexplicably. Not only that, but he, the real one, was also treated as a fake. In fact, it was not only Ryder who thought so, the rest of the masters and Sarvant had the same idea. When Golden Glitter used Gate of Babylon for the first time, it was destroyed by Berserker, but now Dustless showed the true strength of Gate of Babylon. It was no wonder that everyone was daydreaming. Well, I will find a chance to let you witness the gap between a fake and a real one. Hero King Gilgamesh snorted angrily, and left. He was very angry with today's battle. Enosaka's mansion. Kiri, our plan needs to be modified. The 8th hero is very strong. I used to think that Gilgamesh was the strongest, but now it seems that I was wrong. Enosaka Toshimi's face was full of decadence, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. Yes. Judging from the battle just now, Gilgamesh may not be his match. Yen Feng Chili maintained his composure. But only this time, he looked at Enosaka Toshimi's eyes. There was a strange light, like a hungry beast. No one knew what he was thinking. Kiri, I have something for you, Pucci. Suddenly, Yen Feng Chili attacked. He didn't give Toshimi a chance to finish his words. He used a dagger to end Toshimi's life. There was a visible bloody hole in his heart. Pucci. As if afraid that Toshimi Nagasaka's death wasn't complete enough, Yen Fengili gave him another stab. I treated you so well, and I even wanted to avenge your father. Tell me everything you want to know. Why are you so vicious? Toshiomi Inaka's lips trembled as he asked. Avenge my father. Yen Feng Chili followed and then said expressionlessly, as expected, Master, you don't understand me. My only regret is that I didn't kill my father with my own hands. Archer and I will finish the mission you didn't finish, Yen Feng Chili said coldly and turned to leave. However, he did not see that in the dark room, a pair of bright eyes were watching this scene in a daze. So that's how it is, Gilgamesh, that bastard betrayed me. Toshimi Nagasaka was unwilling to cry, but Yen Feng Chili turned a deaf ear and left with no expression. Toshimi Nagasaka didn't have much time. We seem to be late. Outside Toshimi Nagasaka's house, Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil looked at the gloomy building. Saber and Alice Phil's delicate eyes wrinkled. They looked at each other and could see the confusion in each other's eyes. The reward for defeating Castor is to find the church. Why do you come to Toshimi Nagasaka's house now? Alice Phil was full of questions. Yen Feng Chili is dead, and his son Yen Feng Chili is colluding with Toshimi Nagasaka. What's wrong with the sunset? Dustless asked flatly. It seems that no one is here. Alice Phil pressed the doorbell, but no one responded for a long time. I smell blood. After a long silence, Saber suddenly interrupted and said, It seems that someone is dead here. Could it be? Dustless heard the words and kicked open the door of Toshimi Nagasaka's house. According to his vague memory, he searched for the trace of Toshimi Nagasaka. Soon, the three of them passed through the tunnels and walked to an old door. Woo-woo, just when they were about to open the door, an unexpected sobbing sound was the first to enter their ears. Let's go in. Dustless and Saber looked at each other. Saber opened the door, and Dustless blocked in front of Alice Phil to prevent any accidents. Pucci. Saber pulled out the sword of Excalibur and easily broke the door. She thought she would meet servant of Toshimi Nagasaka, but when she saw the blood-red figure, she was stunned. Sure enough, Yen Fong-kiri still killed Toshimi Nagasaka and is still in cahoots with Archer. Are the two of them really that compatible? Dustless whispered to himself, and then glanced at Toshimi Nagasaka's body. No, he was still barely breathing, and his heart and another knife wound were temporarily bandaged, but he was not far from death. Akui Nagasaka and Rin Nagasaka. He glanced at the two of them in surprise. Apparently, they helped Toshimi Nagasaka temporarily treat his wound. Strange, I remember that they left Dongmu City. Dustless whispered secretly, his mouth squirmed, and when he was about to speak, Toshimi Nagasaka's old and desperate voice sounded first. Chapter 1698. I'm sorry, Miss Alice Field. It was rude of me to let you see me in such a sorry state. Toshimi Dosaka's tone was very subtle. Due to the distance, Alice Field could not hear his words clearly. She did not understand what he meant. Master Enosaka, please speak your mind. Alice Field took a few bold steps forward, taking the initiative to approach the dying Toshiomi Enosaka. Dustless and Saber were both here, so she did not have to be afraid of Toshiomi Enosaka's schemes. I would like to entrust the mother and daughter to the care of the Einsbaron family. Toshiomi Enosaka glanced at Kue Enosaka and the teary-eyed Rin Enosaka. He lowered his head in shame, then put on an apologetic expression and blamed himself. Now that things have come to this, I won't blame anyone. I can only blame myself for being blind. It's fine if I die, but I don't want to implicate Kue and Rin. You just realized that you were blind? Wuchen snorted when he heard that. His face was full of ridicule and disdain. This guy was too self-righteous. He thought that he controlled the master who had calculated everything. That was why he was killed by himself in the end. Watch your tone. I won't allow you to look down on my father. A girl with a ponytail and emerald eyes suddenly appeared in front of Dustless. Her angry eyes locked onto him, and she shook her fist threateningly. She looked like she would beat him up if he dared to talk nonsense again. This little girl, seeing this, Dustless could only roll his eyes. If it was any other heroic spirit who provoked him, he could have beaten them up to vent his anger. But if it was a little girl who was not even 10 years old, Rin, shut up. He's right. I was too complacent in this Holy Grail war, so much so that I neglected the dangerous people around me. Toshiomi Enosaka waved his hand with the last of his strength, then looked at Alice Field with hopeful eyes. The Enosaka family will withdraw from this Holy Grail war. I hope that you can take care of the mother and daughter for me. This, Alice Field hesitated for a moment when she heard this. Looking at Toshimi's pleading eyes, she couldn't help but feel pity for him. In the end, she gritted her teeth and said, "All right, I agree to your choice. If that's the case, then I can die in peace." Hearing this, Toshiomi Enosaka smiled and left the mortal world. In the end, he closed his turbid eyes in satisfaction. What a farce. However, Toshiomi Enosaka still has some conscience. At least he's better than the scum who used his wife as bait. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He vaguely understood Toshiomi Inaka's intentions, and his impression of him changed slightly. Nothing was absolute. It was one thing if Yen Fong-chili killed Toshimi, but what if he attacked Rin and Kue Toshimi as well? It wasn't impossible. Yen Fong-chili was a temperamental person. No one knew what he would do. It was normal for Toshimi to leave his family in Alice's care. He could use this opportunity to protect Sang. Moreover, the Toshimi family had already withdrawn from this Holy Grail war. They were no longer a threat to the Ahrensburg family. We won't be able to get the command seal. Yen Fong-chili probably took it all. Let's go back. After a few hours, Dushless and the others finally left the Toshimi family. During this time, they held a funeral for Toshimi. Alice Phil also took the initiative to comfort Rin and Kue Toshimi. The orphan and widow were quite pitiful. On a bustling street, the car Dushless and the others were stopped in front of a supermarket. Alice Phil said that she wanted to help Rin and Kue Toshimi buy some basic necessities. Women sure have a lot of things to do. They're always like this. Sitting in the car, Dustless's casual words attracted 3 hostile gazes. He turned around and saw that it was Saber, Rin, and Kue Toshimi. Cough cough cough. That was a slip of the tongue. After Wu-chan cursed his bad luck, he immediately apologized. They were living under the same roof. He could offend a strong man, but he definitely couldn't offend a woman. You guys wait here. I'll go see why Alice Phil is so slow. Seriously, it's just buying some necessities. Does she need to take so long? Dustless complained as he got out of the car. Just as he was about to close the door, an unexpected figure grabbed him. A strong man with red skin reached out and grabbed Dustless's shoulder. His rough face was filled with a bold smile. He waved the huge wine barrel in his other hand and laughed. Isn't this the 8th heroic spirit? Let's drink together tonight. I even invited that guy Gold Sparkle. A banquet between kings isn't something that can be casually attended. Do you want to come? This person was Ryder, the Conqueror King Iskandar. His master was Weber Velvet. However, Dustless only glanced at him in boredom and said dispiritedly, "Sorry, I'm just a normal person. I'm not interested in the banquet of kings." Hey, don't reject me so coldly. Even if you're not interested, I remember that your ally Saber is a famous Night King. She should be interested in this kind of thing. Ryder didn't care about Dustless and looked at Saber in the car. Night King, what do you think? Don't you want to discuss the path of kings with other kings? Ryder asked expectantly as he got into the car with his rough face. Sorry, Conqueror King. My attitude towards this kind of thing is the same as Dustless. Saber also shook her head and refused to participate in the banquet of kings. Chapter 1699. Oh. This is really giving me a headache. Seeing that Dustless and Saber were not interested, Ryder could not help but sigh in disappointment. He lowered his head, looking rather disappointed and depressed. Hurry up, Ryder, don't think that everyone is as bored as you. The thin figure behind the broad figure urged impatiently, staring at Dustless fearfully. Ryder's master, Wilbur Velvet, felt a lingering fear as he looked at those dark pupils. The 3 heroic spirits that had died so far were all killed by Dustless. Wilbur Velvet had even secretly given Dustless the nickname, Heroic Spirit Killer. Sorry for the long wait, it took a while. Alice Field rushed out of the supermarket with an apologetic smile on her face. When I saw the dazzling products, I was a little. Ryder. Are you here to declare war? Seeing Ryder and his master, Alice Field frowned in doubt. I was thinking too much, I'll take my leave. Ryder gave Alice Field and Dustless a reassuring look, then left with his master out of extreme boredom. That's strange. After returning to the car, Dustless stared at Ryder's back that had not yet disappeared, muttering suspiciously. Is there something wrong? I don't think Ryder and his master have any intention of attacking us, Anne. Ryder doesn't look like a heroic spirit that would attack others. Saber, who was in charge of driving, replied. She had done a lot of research on Ryder's personality. That's not what I meant. Dustless shook his head, then explained softly, what I meant was, it's strange that Ryder gave up so easily. In my impression, Ryder would definitely pester us to participate in the king's feast. But I'm curious that you rejected it. You and I are different, you were once the king of ancient Britain, your identity is very suitable to participate. Saber's eyes flashed with a complicated sense of desolation, but she did not explain further. In the blink of an eye, it was nighttime. Ha ha ha, bold laughter resounded through the sky. Looking at the rough man in front of him, Wu Chen sighed. Sure enough, he fixed his eyes and saw that this guy was Ryder. Well, I'm really sorry. Wilbur Velvet hurriedly bowed and apologized. He had tried his best to stop Ryder, but the guy was determined and insisted on drinking with Dustless and Saber. Ryder, you bastard, Saber frowned as she stared at the big guy in front of her and warned, your actions can be seen as an invasion. We can forcibly expel you. Hee hee, since I'm here, you won't be able to chase me away, right? As the saying goes, those who have nothing to lose are not afraid of those who wear shoes. At this moment, Ryder placed the wine barrel on the ground and said with a look of indifference, as the Night King, you shouldn't be so petty. Forget it, sit down. Dustless shook his head helplessly and gestured for the two to sit down. At the same time, he glanced at the dark corner on the left. Hero King. Are you a street rat? Hiding at home every time, are you afraid of dying in the light? Dustless's sudden sarcasm stunned Saber and Ryder. They looked at the east corner at the same time. A golden light flashed and a man in golden armor appeared. Your eloquence is stronger than your strength. The arrogant archer Hero King appeared and said proudly, the protagonist is usually the last to appear. This is common sense. The minions that come out early are the first to die. So in this war, this king is destined to have the last laugh. Archer, Lunatic's personality hasn't changed at all. Do you still think you can get the Holy Grail? To be honest, I'm already a little desperate. Taking a glance at Dustless, Ryder sighed and immediately poured himself a glass of wine. At the same time, he also handed a glass of wine to Dustless and Saber. Compared to the arrogant archer Hero King, Ryder knew his strength better. Humph, bastard, pay attention to your words. The Hero King archer swept an unfriendly glance at Ryder and immediately stared at Dustless and Saber with his torch-like eyes. He announced loudly, it's not about obtaining the Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail was originally this king's. It's just returning it to its rightful owner. Another thought is that this king wants to teach thieves like you who attempted to steal my treasures a lesson. This guy's head must have been crushed by a door. Dustless scanned the Hero King archer with a look of pity. Immediately, he began drinking to drown his sorrows. After all, they were all kings. He did not have such a status, so it was inappropriate for him to interrupt. He just needed to stay out of it. Archer, the next time you talk big, you'd better build an iron tongue. Saber mocked the Hero King coldly. This guy didn't even blush when he lied. It was obvious that he was an expert. Iron tongue. Hearing this, Archer frowned and pursed his lips. Then, he asked in puzzlement, this king's tongue isn't wrong. Why do I need an iron tongue? You don't even know this. Dustless exposed him with a smile, the next time you talk big, you won't sprain your tongue. After all, it's made of iron. With that said, everyone roared with laughter, ignoring the livid Hero King. Chapter 1700. When the Hero King heard the duo's mockery, his nose nearly went crooked from anger. As everyone knew, he had a bad temper to begin with. He never knew what it meant to endure humiliation. He had always believed that the heavens were number one and he was number two. No, he had always believed that the heavens were number two and that he was number one. Now that he was being humiliated and ridiculed in public by Dustless, he gritted his teeth in anger as his facial expression twitched. Unlucky. The Hero King cursed silently as he picked up the wine barrel and began drinking. Gulp. Gulp. Who knew that the Hero King would spit it all out after taking 2 mouthfuls? He cursed at Ryder, preposterous. Giving the king such trashy wine to drink is blasphemy. Trashy. Blasphemy. Ryder was secretly rendered speechless as he retorted, "This is already the best wine on the market. A bastard who has never seen the world." "I knew you would say that." The hero king curled his lips in disdain and immediately threw an exquisite golden wine cup to Dustless and company. This king had once collected some of the treasures on the ground. "The best things in the world are all mine. Wine is no exception. Don't you have such an ability as well?" Saber leaned close to Dustless's ear and whispered into it. She said strangely, "This fellow can't be your biological brother, right? Both of you have the same ability, huh?" Dustless's drunkenness disappeared from Saber's question. He looked at Golden Twinkle, who had an explosive expression and was rendered speechless. "If he was my biological brother, would have long been killed." "Ah. According to Archer's personality, what you say makes sense." Saber, who was taken aback, nodded resolutely. "Phew. That feels great." After Ryder finished drinking, he used his hazy drunkenness to say loudly, "After obtaining the Holy Grail, my wish is to be reborn and conquer this world again. I want Iskandar's name to spread to every corner of the world. If that's the case, then the Holy Grail is destined to pass you by, Conquest King." Swirling the red liquid in the wine cup, Dustless explained, "Your name has already spread throughout the world. No, that's history. I want to rule the world again." Ryder shook his head like a rattledrum. "By the way, Dustless, what's your wish?" Saber blinked her eyes and asked with a hint of anticipation in her tone. Saber wasn't the only one who was curious. Even the Conquest King and Hero King had put down the alcohol they had brought to their mouths. Their eyes circled around Dustless. "My wish, huh?" Dustless thought for a moment, and to his dismay, he realized that he did not have a single decent wish at the moment. Even if he had a wish, it would be impossible for him to fulfill it with the power of the Holy Grail. "I don't have any wishes." After a while, Dustless gave an answer that left everyone speechless. "I don't have any wishes either." The Hero King immediately added, "All the treasures in the world belong to this king. That so-called Holy Grail is no exception. Participating in this boring war is only to teach you lawbreakers, thieves who wish to steal my Holy Grail, a lesson. You and Archer seem to have the same ability. Is there such a thing as the Holy Grail?" Saber asked Dustless. "No." After thinking about it carefully, Dustless replied decisively. "Ha ha ha." The Hero King smiled proudly and pointed to Dustless and said loudly, "There is definitely no fake, so this king is the real one." In the past few days, the Hero King had been gloomy. Since Dustless used the treasure of the king to defeat Castor, all the masters and heroic spirits regarded him as a fake. "No, you misunderstood me." Glancing faintly at the Hero King, Dustless suddenly said, "My treasure of the king are all killing weapons. Even if I have something like the Holy Grail, I don't remember it. Who knows, I might have even thrown it away. I'm a person who doesn't like to collect worthless items that take up a lot of space." This time, it was Saber and Ryder's turn to be speechless. Both of them were local tyrants. "Get the Holy Grail, I will change the history of the destruction of ancient Britain." Saber's eyes shone with a cold light, and her eyes were as dazzling as diamonds. Who would have thought that as soon as these words fell, it immediately attracted the ridicule of the Hero King and Ryder. "Ryder, did you hear that? This naive little girl actually did such a thing." The Hero King laughed as if he heard the funniest joke in the world. "If your dream is just like this, then I will never recognize you as the king." Although Ryder was not as exaggerated as the Hero King, he also shook his head and held a negative attitude. "What's wrong with saving your own country? Don't you two have any regrets about the destruction of the country you loyally protect?" Saber asked angrily, feeling that her dignity was trampled on. "Never regret. The hero king and rider were determined, and their resolute tone didn't seem like they were lying or deliberately attacking Saber. The king acknowledges it, the king allows it. The king carries the entire world. The king is the absolute controller, a unique existence. Wanting me to die for others is simply wishful thinking. The hero king said loudly, while the conquest king nodded thoughtfully. It dealt a blow to Saber as she involuntarily looked at the silent Dustless with her despondent eyes. To be honest, I have never been a king, nor do I understand what the so-called king's way is. Looking into Saber's eyes, Dustless said the answer he once got. I have lived for so many years, and I have concluded my own principles. There is no right or wrong in this world. Just do as your heart wishes. Walk your own path and let others say what they want. Everything is fine as long as you have a clear conscience. Chapter 1701. Walk your own path. Let others talk about it. Upon hearing Dustless's words, the hero king and conquest king simultaneously figured out the meaning behind it. They nodded in unison as their eyes emitted a bright glow. Be it a king or a commoner, all they needed to do was follow their hearts. There was no right or wrong. Everything could be decided according to their will. I never expected this inferior impostor to have such a different view of things. Shaking the golden cup in his hand, the hero king did not hesitate to pour the scarlet liquid into his mouth. That makes sense. There is no right or wrong in this world to begin with. At the end of the day, everyone just has different standpoints. Nodding his head, the conquest king also accepted Dustless's explanation. Immediately, he sighed and said, "The onlooker sees things clearly." Perhaps it's precisely because you aren't a king that you can see things more clearly and feel more at ease. What a great wise man. Dustless did not reply when he heard that. He stood up and stretched his back. After loosening his muscles, he said, I can't be considered wise. At the end of the day, it's just that I've lived a little longer than all of you. I'm a little tired. I'll head back to wash up and sleep. Goodbye. Just as his voice faded, Dustless did not give them a chance to react. His body gradually lost its texture as it transformed into streams of light that filled the sky like countless fireflies. In an instant, he vanished from the trio's eyes. What an unfathomable fellow. The hero king and conquest king were dumbfounded. After carefully sensing the situation, they shook their heads. Despite not having any magic power and having a combat strength close to 5, he was surprisingly powerful. He had beaten all the heroic spirits to a pulp. Currently, all the heroic spirits that had been killed were all Dustless's doing. Thank you, Dustless. Saber's eyes were filled with gratitude as she swept a glance in the direction where Dustless had disappeared. She had been dealt quite a blow by the hero king and conquest king who echoed each other, to the point of hesitation. If not for Dustless lending a helping hand at the critical moment, Saber would have found the confidence to stand on her feet despite it being an insignificant sentence. Ah! A bunch of kids who haven't grown up yet. How dare you talk about the ridiculous way of the king in front of me? Should I say that you guys are naive or ignorant? In the brightly lit corridor, even in the dead of night, it was still shining brightly. The corridor was filled with straight murals, giving it an indescribable elegance. In any case, a rich family like Einsbellen didn't lack money. Using a popular saying, I'm a fool with a lot of money. Creak. Just as Dustless pushed open the door of his room and was about to turn on the lights to take a shower, he strangely found that all the chandeliers in the room were on. Not only that, when he walked into the bedroom, he saw 2 figures on his bedding. Dustless was immediately dumbfounded. The 2 uninvited guests in the room were not the most bizarre thing. The most bizarre thing was that these 2 figures were not wearing any clothes. Their exquisite and flawless skin was completely exposed to Dustless's sight. Get lost, pervert. The atmosphere was tense for a few seconds before a few pillows were thrown at him. Upon closer inspection, the two figures were actually Rin and Osaka and Kuei and Osaka. Wait! With a flick of his finger, Ryatsu shredded all the pillows. After taking a closer look at the furnishings in the room, Dustless confirmed that he didn't walk into the wrong room. He shouted angrily, "This is my room without a doubt. The two of you are sleeping in my room without a doubt. There's no doubt that the two of you are the intruders. How did I become the pervert? Don't you get it? This castle doesn't have any extra rooms for us to use, so your room is being used. Amir Einherjar should feel honored." Rin and Osaka and her mother hid under the bedding with red faces. Ha! Dustless was speechless as he looked at the arrogant Rin Tosaka. This bullshit explanation was too far-fetched. The Ahrensburg family was a nouveau riche. The castle was as big as a few football fields. How could there not be a few rooms for people to sleep in? I'm really sorry, Mr. Einherjar. It was Miss Alice Phil who arranged for Rin and me to stay here. If you are dissatisfied, Rin and I can leave. The gentle and virtuous Kuei and Osaka explained. That's not necessary. You can sleep here for now. I'll go ask Master if there are any other bedrooms. Good night. Dustless turned around and closed the door. Then, he walked towards Alice Phil's room. Unexpectedly, as soon as he opened the door, he saw her arguing with Wei Gong Kisi. Their faces were red, and it was obvious that they were both angry. How strange. The two of them can argue. Dustless had a strange expression. In his impression, this couple had always been the type that stuck together like honey. It was unprecedented for them to argue. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Take care. Seeing Dustless appear, Wei Gong Kisi left with a gloomy expression. Alice Phil, you too, Dustless stopped himself. After all, this was a matter between the couple. As an outsider, he had no right to interrupt. Do you want to ask about Kuei and Rin? I'm sorry, Dustless, but this is something I allowed. Alice Phil explained with a bleak expression. Her bright eyes clearly understood Dustless' intentions. Is that so? Dustless nodded slightly. He couldn't help but ask, then where's my new room? No, there's no new room. I deliberately let you two sleep together. Alice Phil shook her head. Then, she revealed a meaningful smile. Her face was very pale, and her smile looked more like a forced smile. I know why you want to ask, but this matter is very special. I can only wrong you for now. Special? Dustless smiled bitterly. Even if it was special, he couldn't betray his teammate. Even if he had a reason, he couldn't. Chapter 1702. As she looked at the aggrieved Dustless, the resentment on Alice Field's face was completely wiped away, and a wisp of a heartfelt smile flashed on her jade-like face. What's so funny? Dustless rolled his eyes and asked. He felt that this girl was gloating. Sigh, Alice Phil frowned and sighed. Her delicate face gradually lost its luster. She said sadly, Kisi wanted to kill the mother and daughter. I couldn't bear it. So we inevitably quarreled. Kill the two of them. Are you referring to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka? Kisi seems to be a righteous partner. Is there no reason? He doesn't look like someone who would kill the innocent. Are you mistaken? Dustless frowned. Although he was ruthless, as long as those people didn't resist and restrain themselves, he could let them go. Of course there is a reason. Although what Kisi said is reasonable, I have already promised Toshimi and Osaka. If I hurt the two of them again, I can't accept it. Alice Phil. You didn't do anything wrong. Dustless smiled and encouraged her loudly, you did the right thing. Remember, you are a human with flesh and blood. You are not a puppet created according to Kisi's plan. There is no need to follow his will. So you agree with my way of doing things? Aliceville retracted her sadness and revealed a cheerful smile. Of course I agree. Dustless smiled and reached out his hand. He added in his heart, as long as Kisi likes it, no matter if it is right or wrong, I will stand on his opposite side. Aliceville organized her thoughts and explained, Miss Wumi, I just received news that Yudong Yayan from the Yudong family is also participating in this Holy Grail War. And the reason is related to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka. The reason why Kisi asked me to kill the two of them secretly was to prevent Yudong Yayan from finding out that Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin are living in our house. Otherwise, Yudong Yayan's berserker will very likely attack us. The enemy will also have an opportunity to take advantage of. Until now, Kisi is still afraid of Yanfeng Qi. Is that the only reason? Wei Gong Qisi's words make sense. Dustless nodded in agreement. This reason was barely acceptable. If Jantong Yayan really knew that Kuei and Ling were here, he would definitely lead the berserker army to attack the Einsbaron family. But, changing the topic, Dustless glanced at Alice and Phil suspiciously. Then they can also live with Saber. There's no need for me to live with them, Alice, Phil, I also think that the mother and daughter can sleep with me. Don't you trust my ability? At the same time, Saber grumbled. For some reason, when she heard that Dustless was going to sleep with Ling and Kuei, she felt a little jealous. After all, they were allies in the trenches. It did not feel good to have them taken away from her just like that. Have the Hero King and the Conqueror King left? Noticing Saber's appearance, Dustless instinctively looked out of the window. The place where they were drinking was empty. The Hero King and the Conqueror King seemed to have left. This banquet could be considered the best banquet. If they were to meet again, they would fight to the death. That's a good idea, but it's impossible. Aliceville's face was filled with worry. She decisively rejected the idea. That's impossible. You're Qisi's master. What if he uses a command spell on you? Although the probability of Wei Gong Qisi using a command spell on such a trivial matter was close to zero, nothing was absolute. It was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, Wei Gong Qisi was a person who was difficult to grasp. Moreover, in this Holy Grail War, all of Wei Gong Qisi's command spells remained intact because of Dustless. Until now, he had not used a command spell on Saber. Even if he were to use a command spell on Saber, it would not be a big deal. After all, the Holy Grail War was about to end. So, I'll be the scapegoat this time. Dustless glanced at Aliceville in annoyance. He said in a troubled and depressed tone, doesn't that mean that it's useless for me to change rooms? Kuei and Ling will still be with me. That's what I mean. Aliceville nodded slightly. She looked at Dustless strangely and said, you're just a heroic spirit. Why do you have to care so much? Hey. You're talking as if heroic spirits have no human rights. Dustless made a scary expression. Unexpectedly, Aliceville did not care. Instead, she made a face at him. She was not afraid of Dustless's threat at all. I'm destined to be the scapegoat this time. Wuchen looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. It was a sad thing to have such a troublemaking master. Scapegoat. It's not as serious as you said. At most, I'll let you be a temporary bodyguard. As if she thought of something, Aliceville's eyes rolled. She looked like a sly fox. Even though Kuei Dosaka and Toshimi Dosaka have been married for many years and even had 2 children, we were bathing together just now. I know her figure. Cough. Noticing that Aliceville was getting further and further away from the topic, Wuchen couldn't help but cough twice to interrupt Aliceville's speech. He opened his mouth and deliberately changed the topic to Saber. As you can see, the task of protecting Alice Phil will be handed over to you, Saber. Leave it to me. Also, don't do anything out of line. Otherwise, my sacred sword will go berserk. Saber instantly took out the Excalibur. It invisibly emitted an extraordinary aura. It was full of warnings and threats. This guy is deliberately making things difficult for me. Dustless glared at Alice Phil bitterly. He nodded at Saber and left. Chapter 1703. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Alice Phil persuaded Wu Qin for nearly half an hour. Wu Qin was enlightened and reluctantly agreed to Alice Phil's ridiculous request. In Alice Phil's words, "You're a dead spirit. Why do you care so much?" Creak. Dustless pushed open the door gently. He thought that Rin and Akui Tosaka were already asleep, but the chandelier in the bedroom and living room were still on. Are they asleep? Why are the lights still on? Dustless shook his head when he realized that there was no movement in the bedroom. He didn't want to disturb the mother and daughter. He sat on the sofa and rested for a while. Then, he turned on the TV out of boredom. He turned the volume to the lowest and found a few bags of snacks to pass the time. Dustless accepted Alice Phil's suggestion to protect Rin and Akui Tosaka for the time being. He had to stay close to them. Jiantong Yayan would definitely ask for the mother and daughter back. You pervert, you came back without saying a word. Could it be that you wanted to take advantage of the fact that we were asleep to ambush me and my mother? Pervert. Dustless was stunned when he heard the angry voice. He looked over and saw that it was Rin Tosaka. She snatched Dustless's potato chips and stuffed them into her mouth. Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say that. Dustless warned her sternly. He suddenly realized that this girl was too arrogant. Isn't that the truth? None of you heroic spirits are good people. Rin Tosaka crossed her arms and said proudly, you can trample on other people's lives just to satisfy your selfish desires. Even if Yen Fengili didn't kill my father, the rest of you would. It's just a matter of order. You're quite open-minded. That's what you mean. Dustless didn't comment. Even if Yen Fengili didn't kill Toshimi Nagasaka in the end, with Kamiya Kishi's personality, he would still order Saber to kill Toshimi Nagasaka. Like Toshimi Nagasaka said, it was just a matter of who came first. But no matter what, my duty now is to protect you and your mother. You can doubt me or hate me. This is already set in stone. Just accept it. Dustless handed Rin and Osaka a bag of snacks and continued to watch the boring soap opera. Rin Enbin frowned. Just as he was about to scold Dustless's voice rang out. Instead of scolding me, why don't you console your mother? But she's already asleep, so she can only vent all her anger on you heroic spirits. If it weren't for this disgusting war, father wouldn't have left us. Rin and Osaka's eyes were red, and he looked like he was about to cry. Idiot. Seeing this, Wu Che scratched Rin Enbin's nose and reminded him, a child will always be a child. How can you understand the world of adults? If you were the mother of a child, would you cry in front of the child? This will only hurt the child even more. That's true. Rin and Osaka was stunned when he heard this. He quickly wiped his tears and ran into the room. A brat will always be a brat. His thoughts are indeed too simple. Dustless shook his head as he watched Rin leave. Swish. Swish. Time decelerated. Under the black night sky, a pitch-black monster nimbly shuttled back and forth. He wore black armor, and his mask was embellished with a scarlet glow. He looked extremely terrifying and sinister. Ao 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 ao. Especially from his mouth, there were bursts of hissing sounds that made one's heart tremble. His entire body was emitting an unknown black color of disgust. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Grim Reaper. Moreover, he was holding a sharp weapon that emitted cold light in all directions. Bang bang bang. A violent sound rang out. Suddenly, the black shadow smashed through the tempered glass and landed in the brightly lit living room. He then skimmed towards the bedroom with great familiarity. At this moment, an extremely dissatisfied voice rang out. Berserker. That fellow, the Hero King, calling you a mad dog isn't wrong. You sure are a vulgar creature that doesn't know any manners. Even the most ancient king, Gilgamesh, would not ignore my existence when he sees me. Yet, you treat me like air. I'm really sorry, Berserker. If you don't leave on your own accord, then I'll force you to leave. You might even lose your life. Dustless, who was lying on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes. They were also scarlet eyes. In his eye sockets, 3 mysterious tomos slowly rotated, emitting an ominous glow. Compared to the ferocious Berserker, the current Dustless gave off a more terrifying feeling. The former was more like an enraged lion, while the latter gave off the feeling of a cold executioner. Why is this guy here as well? Personal protection. Damn it. Among all the heroic spirits, this 8th heroic spirit is the most difficult to deal with. His strength is ridiculously strong. In the dark forest at the border of the castle, a figure was gasping for breath and wailing in pain. His face was twitching, and under his skin, it was as if there were countless insects scurrying around aimlessly. It was extremely disgusting. This person was Momoitsuki Yayan. When he found out that Akui Tasaka and Rin Tasaka had been taken to the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he rushed over without stopping. His intention was just as Alice Phil had guessed, to save the mother and son who had been through a lot. However, to his surprise, he never expected Dustless to be the personal protection. Boom boom boom. An explosion suddenly sounded. The invading Berserker was kicked out by Dustless the same way he had invaded. Chapter 1704. Seeing Berserker's figure flying out, Jiantong Yayan was stunned for a moment before he cursed. Berserker is a useless piece of trash. He's good at causing trouble for me, but when he's fighting with the enemy, he can only fight with someone like Archer. Humph, trash. Jiantong Yayan complained loudly in disgust as if Berserker was a nobody that was not worth mentioning. The actual result was not like that. Among all the heroic spirits, Berserker's statistics were considered top-notch. The fact that he could fight with Gold Flash was proof of his strength. Now, he was being tortured by Dustless because his opponent was too monstrous. Light speed kick. A laser beam fell on Berserker's body, and his body immediately flew out uncontrollably. Boom boom boom. On the surface, it looked like a light kick, but the real power was terrifying. The heavy armor on Berserker's abdomen collapsed due to the direct attack of the light speed kick. Caw caw caw. A large number of pieces of the armor were peeling off. Caw caw caw. The void suddenly cracked, and from the mysterious unknown space, an ancient dark red katana swept out. The blade was red and simple, and just by looking at it, one could feel that it was very hot and fatal, as if he could be burned alive at any time. It was the super soul slasher that could destroy the world, Ryujin Jaka. Berserker, you can still hold on for so long. It's worthy of praise. This is really a miracle. Dustless smacked his lips and nodded with a smile. You can still hold on after taking a light speed kick. Although I don't know how strong your combat power is, I can be sure that your ability to take a beating is definitely second to none. Ow ow ow. Woo woo woo. In the dark, Berserker seemed to have heard Dustless's ridicule clearly. Inside his helmet, there was a roar that sounded like a human. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Then, he turned into a gust of black wind and pounced straight at Dustless. Boom boom boom. The two immediately engaged in close combat, and bright sparks kept flickering. This is a good chance. Now that the 8th heroic spirit is being held back by Berserker, I can go find Kuei Helen and take advantage of this rare opportunity to rescue Kuei Helen and her daughter. Seeing this, Jantong Yayan was overjoyed. Looking at Berserker, who was fighting Dustless, he sighed in his heart. This heroic spirit, who always liked to attract hatred, had done its job this time. While the two were fighting, Tong Yayan dragged his exhausted body and hurriedly slipped to Kuei and Ling's room. It was extremely difficult for him to walk, and he even fell down several times along the way. There was nothing he could do about it. All his energy had been sucked away by the worms wandering in his body. Now, he was just a shell that could control oil. Phew. Thank goodness Berserker is here. Otherwise, with the existence of the 8th heroic spirit, I would never be able to reach this door. 10 minutes later, Jantong Yayan finally came to Dustless's room and found Ling and Kuei's room. I'm relieved to be praised by you, but... is it really okay for you to ignore me like this? Jantong Yayan was shocked by the sudden voice. He turned his head and saw Wu Qin, who looked lazy. He was sitting on the sofa, eating potato chips and drinking Coke. He looked very leisurely and comfortable. Impossible, you should be fighting Berserker. Why are you here now? Staring at Dustless, who was fighting Berserker not far away, Tong Yayan glanced at Dustless, who was eating chips. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he was not seeing things. He was shocked to find that there were two Dustless in front of him. Idiot, the one fighting Berserker is just my shadow clone. Dustless glanced at the shocked Tong Yayan and showed a look of disdain. Berserker would have a hard time dealing with my doppelganger, let alone my real body. I purposely suppressed the strength of my doppelganger so that Berserker could stall it. My main purpose was to lure you out. As I expected, you really fell for it. How pathetic. Tong Yayan was furious when he heard Wu Chen's words. He stared at Wu Chen's mocking face. He felt that his dignity and IQ had been trampled on by this abominable guy. A mere heroic spirit dares to trick me. Eat him up. In his anger, Jantong Yayan suddenly waved his big hand. His skin suddenly burst open and countless larvae broke out from his skin. There were dozens or even hundreds of larvae that came to bite Wu Qin. The buzzing sound was unbearable. Being stared at by countless man-eating insects, no one could laugh it off. You're overestimating yourself. Dustless snorted and rolled his eyes. His pupils emitted a ferocious aura. At the same time, a strong wave of Ryatsu erupted from his body. Puchi! 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 All kinds of disgusting insects wandering in the space collapsed in an instant and turned into blood. The disgusting smell was as unbearable as the smell on Tong Yayan's body. Stupid thing, Tong Yayan. Have your intelligence been eaten by insects? You want to use such a rubbish trick to deal with a heroic spirit? Do you think I'm a small character like Toshimi Nagasaka? Chapter 1705. Hearing Dustless's mocking words, Jotong Yayan was enraged. After all, the so-called heroic spirits were just tools used by the masters. No matter how strong they were still just tools. Just like Lancer and Kenneth in the original novel. Lancer's combat power was amazing, and he even injured Saber. However, as the master, Kenneth ordered Lancer to commit suicide. Lancer couldn't escape his tragic fate and was killed by his own gun in the end. Damn you, you're just a heroic spirit. How dare you be so arrogant when you're already dead? Suddenly, Jotong Yayan realized that Akui and Rin were still in the castle. Jiutong Yayan, who was in despair, suddenly regained his strength. The mother and daughter were his spiritual sustenance. Therefore, Jiutong Yayan's little universe exploded again. Crack! 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 Jiutong Yayan's skin exploded again, and the insects that were hidden deep inside his body flew out again. These insects were abnormally fat. It was obvious that Jiutong Yayan's body was a feast for them. Disgusting things. Dustless's face turned even colder. He quickly formed a hand seal, and a huge fireball flew out. Fire release, great fireball technique. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the insects that were flying towards Jiutong Yayan turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. Poochie. Tong Yayan was forced to use his strength again and again. In the end, he fell against the wall. His throat rolled a few times, and then he spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. There were also a few insects coming out of his mouth. How rude of you to dirty someone's room with such disgusting things. Especially when there are two ladies living here. Didn't your father, Jiutong Yayan, teach you manners? Leaning on the sofa, Dustless lazily stared at Jiutong Yayan. He also threw the potato chips aside. Even though the tempered glass was broken and the whole room was very cool, the disgusting smell still lingered in the room. Dustless also lost his appetite. Do you really want Akui and Rin to live in peace forever? Dustless glanced at Jiutong Yayan and stared at his crazy face. His voice then sank. Or is it just your rationality that's causing trouble? Do you simply want to possess the mother and daughter? Bullshit. Hearing this, Jiutong Yayan flew into a rage and roared, I regard Ling and Kuei as my family. How could I do such a thing? Don't slander me. I participated in this Holy Grail war because I don't want them to continue following that scumbag Toshimi. Is that so? Then I'll take back what I said earlier. By the way, I'd like to apologize. In other words, your only wish is for Kuei and Ling to live on without any worries, right? Dustless asked with a smile. He looked harmless, but deep in his eyes, there was a scheming light. Of course. For this goal, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I won't hesitate. Jiutong Yayan, who was physically exhausted, finally knelt on the ground. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with determination. Wow, it's rare to see such a great person like you. I can't help but admire you. Dustless continued to smile, and then he instigated, however, even if I give the mother and daughter to you, what kind of protection can you give them? After you die, where can they go? Do you still need to say that? Of course, it's the Jiutong family. The two of them are going to live there for the rest of their lives, living a carefree and stable life like Sakura. Jiutong Yayan answered without hesitation. Then here comes the problem. I don't need to say it. You know what kind of person Jiutong Yayan is. For the Holy Grail, that guy is crazy. And Ling is a genius with an extremely high magical talent. Do you think Jiutong Yayan will overturn her? Jiutong Yayan, you are pushing the mother and daughter into the fire pit. Dustless's voice seemed to contain magic, making Jiutong Yayan roll his eyes and fall silent. What do you want to say? Staring at Dustless, Jiutong Yayan keenly realized that Dustless's words had other meanings. But it was undeniable that what he said made sense. With Jiutong Yayan's personality, he would never let Ling and Kuei go. It was equivalent to pushing the mother and daughter into a merciless sea of fire. I can give the mother and daughter to you, but the premise is, you have to kill your biological father, Jiutong Yayan. That guy won't let Ling and Kuei go easily. Unless you kill that old man, I can only give you Kuei and Ling's protection. Dustless said sincerely. Kill him. Jiutong Yayan was touched when he heard that. In his mind, a terrible old man at the end of his life appeared. His hoarse laughter lingered in his heart for a long time, forming a shadow pattern that was difficult to get rid of. Yes, after you die, that old man won't die. After this Holy Grail, there will be the next Holy Grail war. Maybe that old man will use some evil means. Enough, I agree to your conditions. A raging light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Xiantong Yayan finally gritted his teeth and agreed to Dustless's conditions. At the same time, he roared, I will go back and kill that old man Xiantong Yayan now. I hope you will abide by the agreement when the time comes. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiantong Yayan dragged his tired body and left. Before he left, he did not forget to glance at the room where Ling and Kuei were sleeping soundly. A layer of transparent enchantment was clearly visible. Even though it was as thin as a cicada's wing, even though it was close at hand, it was still at the end of the world for Xiantong Yayan. No wonder you were used. You are so naive. Even if you kill that old man, I won't give the mother and daughter to you. Xiantong Yayan, just like you said before, after all, I am just a Samvart. The decision is in Alice Phil's hands. With a devilish smile, Dustless finally closed his eyes. Chapter 1706. Xiantong Family. Xiantong Yayan returned to his bedroom in a daze. He pushed the door open and planned to lie down on the bed to rest for a while. Unexpectedly, a mysterious figure hit him with a stick. Bang! A heavy stick hit him and Xiantong Yayan was instantly smashed to the ground. A huge red mark appeared on his forehead where he was hit. Xiantong Yayan turned his head and looked at him fiercely. Xiantong Xinyan, be careful. Be careful. I will kill you. Ha! Trash like you. Yayan, since when did you like to boast so shamelessly? After being a hero spirit for a while, you still have confidence. Xiantong Xinyan walked out of the darkness with a walking stick. His eyes were shining like a ghost. It was creepy. His evil and bright eyes looked like a smart and cunning demon. Xiantong Xinyan, let Sakura go immediately. Changing the topic, Tong Yayan used all of his strength to turn around and announce in an extremely cold tone, you better know your place before I make a decision. Decision? What do you want to decide? Yayan, I don't understand where your confidence comes from. Just based on your current half-dead state. You better know your place and help me get the Holy Grail. In that case, I can let Sakura go. If you fail, I can only apologize. Xiantong Xinyan sat on the sofa calmly and looked at Xiantong Yayan who was sweating profusely. He sneered and said, it is impossible for you to get the Holy Grail in your current state. In this case, Sakura can't give up. Old man, you still haven't given up on Sakura. Xiantong Yayan glared at him. His face was cold. Are you going to break the agreement? Agreement? Ridiculous. If you really remember the agreement, you should remember to help me get the Holy Grail. If you fail, the agreement will be invalid. Xiantong Xinyan turned his face shamelessly. You bastard, how dare you! Xiantong Yayan clenched his fists when he heard that. The veins on his forehead bulged. The insects that had disappeared were running around in his skin again. Do you want to be rough with me? With your level? Before we fight, I have to warn you that if you use your heroic spirit rashly, you'll definitely die. Xiantong Zhangyan kindly reminded him that he had not obtained the Holy Grail yet. Naturally, he did not want Xiantong Yayan to die just like that. I'll drag you down with me, Berserker. But Tong Yayan didn't care. He shouted, and a black skeleton knight appeared in front of him. He said coldly, that guy is right. As long as I get rid of you, everything will be over. That guy. Tong Zhangyan was stunned when he heard this. He was secretly annoyed. A rare flame swept through his rotten heart. Someone actually taught his son to kill his father. It was extremely ironic. Ow, 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 ow. Berserker let out his signature low growl and rushed to Zhangyan Jiantong without hesitation. The big sword in his right hand was the first to cut a cold light into the void. Puchi! Tong Zhangyan's body was cut open by Berserker mercilessly. However, there was no blood flowing out as expected. After the old man was cut, his body turned into a large number of flying insects and scattered in all directions. Humph, old man, you run fast. Tong Yayan snorted angrily. He dragged his exhausted body and ran around like a headless fly, looking for traces of Xiaoying. Damn it, which bastard dares to trick my son to kill me? If I find out, I'll definitely let him know the pain of being bitten by thousands of insects. In the gloomy underground warehouse, there were insects everywhere. There were so many of them that they almost covered the entire ground. TSK, old man, do you hate me that much? A sloppy voice suddenly sounded. Tong Zhangyan was shocked. He suddenly turned his head, and an unexpected figure was fixed in his eyes. The short black hair was messy, but there was a trace of elegance in it. Those dark eyes were eternal and unforgettable. Especially the smile on the corner of his mouth, it made Tong Zhangyan even more furious. It was as if he was looking at a clown. It made his face gloomy. The eighth heroic spirit. Are you the one who instigated Yayan to kill me? Glaring at Dushless, Tong Zhangyan said hoarsely, that idiot was deceived by an outsider. His IQ is even lower than Xiaoying's. Useless trash. Ayaya, if Yayan finds out that you're scolding your son like this, he'll be very sad. However, there's one thing I agree with. He can't even kill a terminally ill old man. That guy is really not suitable to be a master. He's indeed useless. Dustless agreed with Tong Zhangyan's opinion. So you're going to personally lead the army to kill me? Tong Zhangyan's eyes were cold. He said, it's not that easy to kill me. After all, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before the old man finished speaking, Dustless turned into a ray of light and appeared in front of him. Then, the scorching heaven sword of clouds slashed down. Puchi! The golden light penetrated Tong Zhangyan's body. From his forehead to his lower body, he was cut open by Dustless. His eyes were staring straight at the indifferent face of Dustless. It seemed that he was unwilling to die. Old man, you can rest in peace. Glancing faintly at Tong Zhangyan, this guy's body immediately burned automatically. Amaterasu. The black fire engulfed Tong Zhangyan's whole body and annihilated him in an instant. Finally, all the insects in the warehouse were burned by Dustless. I still have to take Xiaoying away. Shaking his head in distress, his observation hockey spread out, and Dustless began to look for Sakura's traces. This is what Kue and Osaka begged. Anyway, I'm bored, so I might as well help her. Dustless suddenly felt Tong Zhangyan's house because he suddenly thought of a big problem. He didn't have time to ask before letting Tong Zhangyan leave. Chapter 1707. In the dark courtyard, the path led to a secluded place. Under the moonlight, the lights were blurry. Sakura. Seeing the filthy light, Jiantong Yayan was overjoyed. He dragged his body and rushed over. He could see Sakura's residence in the Jiantong family. Take Sakura away. Even if I die, I can rest in peace. A satisfied smile appeared on his pale face. To Jiantong Yayan, the most important people in his life were Xiaoying, Kue Tosaka, and Rin Tosaka. TSK, what a touching relationship, Yayan. A mocking tone came from the sky. When he was about to reach Sakura's room, a black shadow blocked his way. It was the last person Jiantong Yayan wanted to see in his life. He was second only to Toshiomi Inaka. "What are you doing in our house, you despicable fellow? You are not welcome here." Jiantong Yayan's face was full of bad luck. His tone was full of disgust and fear. "Not welcome? That's not up to you. I came here to ask you something. I also agreed to Sakura's request to take her away." Looking at Jiantong Yayan's disgusted expression, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He did not care. In this world, there were many people who hated him and did not like him. But in the end, there was only one ending, death. Did Sakura agree? Jiantong Yayan did not refute. He knew that Sakura had always been in Sakura's heart. However, Toshiomi Inaka was too cold. Sakura had no right to speak. Moreover, the magician family was only allowed to have one legal heir. In the end, Sakura was given to the Jiantong family. "What do you think I am planning? Also, I just killed your cheap father, Jiantong Yayan. That old man raised a bunch of worms. It's disgusting." The fat worms appeared in his mind. Dustless looked disgusted. "Mind your own business. Even if you don't intervene, I will kill that damn old man." Jiantong Yayan did not thank Dustless. Instead, he scolded Dustless. "You won't be able to last long in this state. Before that, I have a question that I want you to answer." After organizing his thoughts, Dustless's mind became active. When he was in the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he had neglected this important issue. "How did you know that Rin Tasaka and Kue Tasaka are with the Ahrensburg family? Although the Tong family is very well informed, and I don't think you've been to the Eins Balin family, when you went to the castle just now, you were so familiar with it that you didn't even waste any time. You immediately confirmed that the mother and daughter were in my room." "Humph, of course, that's what Wei Gong Chisi told me." Sitting on the ground tiredly, Jiantong Yayan explained, "Wei Gong Chisi, that despicable fellow, hopes to use Kue and Ling as the price in exchange for our cooperation to eliminate Yen Feng Chili and his archer. No wonder you're so familiar with that castle." Dustless suddenly understood. No matter how despicable Wei Gong Chisi was, he didn't care. A person who was twisted by so-called justice would do anything crazy. Is that so? Then I have something important to tell you. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into a treacherous arc as he said, "Wei Gong Chisi, that fellow. Previously, he still hoped to kill Kue He Ling. Letting him live is definitely a big problem. Why don't you go and kill that fellow?" Did I hear wrongly? You want me to kill Wei Gong Chisi? Her eyes were fixed on Dustless. Jiantong Yayan felt that her brain wasn't enough. This guy in front of her wanted her to kill Wei Gong Chisi. Did he not know what this meant? If things went wrong, Wei Gong Chisi's heroic spirit, saber, would disappear. Are you willing to do that? That fellow is a huge threat to Ling and Kue if he's alive. Dustless increased his tone and said, "I don't mind telling you directly. That fellow is actually a pervert and a sex fiend. He is. Enough. I promise you that I'll kill that fellow Wei Gong Chisi." She glanced at Xiao Ying's room with a reluctant expression. But in the end, she gritted her teeth and left. "Idiot, you think you can kill Wei Gong Chisi with just you? That fellow has Saber's protection. Furthermore, Wei Gong Chisi is an extremely cunning and sinister person." Dustless shook his head and turned to Xiao Ying's room. Creak. The door was gently pushed open by Dustless. Unexpectedly, before Dustless could take the initiative to summon her, a tender and soft fist smashed towards Dustless's face. Bang! Dustless casually raised his hand to block the fist. He frowned slightly. The person who attacked him was Jiantong Yayan. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. She was like a walking corpse without any vitality. Grandpa said that other than him, anyone who dares to approach me is a bad person. Xiaoying muttered vaguely. There was no emotion in her voice. She looked like a zombie. Has she been brainwashed? Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this, and then he remembered the character of Jiantong Yayan. He couldn't help but say strangely, that old man wants Xiaoying to kill Jiantong Yayan. As expected, he's an old monster. Bang! Dustless knocked Xiaoying unconscious with a karate chop. He tried to use the Tensigin to modify Xiao Ying's memory and erase the tragic memory of the Jiantong family from the depths of her soul. I hope that Jiantong Yayan can cut off Wei Gong Qixi's hand. It's best to make him disabled, so that he won't be scheming all day long. Dustless left the Jiantong family with Xiaoying in his arms and quickly rushed to the castle of the Ahrensburg family. He had a feeling that Jiantong Yayan will definitely teach Wei Gong Qixi a lesson. Chapter 1708. In the forest near the castle of the Ahrensburg family. You are too reckless. That Dustless is very powerful. I am sure that even Saber would not be able to defeat him, let alone your berserker. In the dark forest, a few figures could be vaguely seen. Jiantong Yayan, let's come up with another plan. I will help you sneak Katsuki Tasaka and Rin Tasaka away. As a price, you have to help me kill Yan Feng and Chili. Wei Gong Qixi looked at the white-haired Jiantong Yayan and suddenly felt that something was wrong with him. This guy's eyes. Something is wrong. Looking at Jiantong Yayan and Berserker who was beside him, Wei Gong Qixi was not worried. He could summon Saber here instantly with a command spell. No, I have changed my plan. He sinisterly approached Wei Gong Qixi. Tong Yayan's calm eyes instantly turned scarlet. His killing intent was completely revealed and filled with a frightening killing intent. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Suddenly, Jiantong Yayan attacked relentlessly. His body turned into a gust of wind and pounced on Wei Gong Qixi who was still in a daze. Gulp. He grabbed Wei Gong Qixi's vital part mercilessly. What are you trying to do? Realizing that his vital part as a man was being grabbed, Wei Gong Qixi shivered and looked at Jiantong Yayan who was in a frenzy. You bastard pervert, I will take you down with me even if I die. Jiantong Yayan's veins were bulging on his right hand as he increased his strength. This guy is so evil. He wants Wei Gong Qixi but can't be a man. Dustless was speechless. He thought that Jiantong Yayan would just cripple Wei Gong Qixi. He did not expect Jiantong Yayan to be so ruthless. He wanted to crush Wei Gong Qixi's balls. No, I have to help Jiantong Yayan once. I like this kind of method. Dustless laughed. He knew that Jiantong Yayan had mastered some special magic. He might be able to turn back time. If that was the case, Jiantong Yayan's sneak attack would have been wasted. If that's the case, then Dustless focused on Wei Gong Qixi's body, purposely avoiding the fatal wound. He mercilessly threw out a pitch-black dagger towards Wei Gong Qixi's body. Swish! Swish! The tip of the pitch-black dagger was shining with a cold light. This is bad. That bastard Jiantong Yayan actually has an accomplice. Hearing the sharp sound behind him, Wei Gong Qixi turned his head and saw a dagger emitting a cold light. Immediately, his heart turned cold. Just as he was about to cast a spell to dodge, it was already too late. The merciless cold light pierced through Wei Gong Qixi's body, causing blood to flow out. Although he wanted to kill this bastard, Dustless had to admit that if he lost Wei Gong Qixi, Saber would immediately collapse and disappear. Poochie! The dagger pierced through his body, leaving a bloody hole. However, because Dustless had purposely avoided the vital parts, Wei Gong Qixi's injuries weren't too serious. Poochie! At the same time, seeing this rare opportunity, Enchanting also launched a fatal attack. He clenched his fist and crushed Wei Gongqi's balls. From now on, there was one less man in the world, and one more eunuch. Gongqi was in so much pain that his head was covered in sweat. His crotch was covered in fresh blood. He fell to the ground and howled in pain. His scarlet eyes stared at Enchanting, wishing that he could turn him into a human stick. This ridiculous bastard. First, he scolded him for being a perverted pervert. Now, he crippled him. Wei Gongqi's heart was deeply traumatized. I will definitely kill you. Definitely. Wei Gongqi roared in his heart. He swore that he had never wanted to kill someone as much as he did now. It was all because of this bastard in front of him that he could no longer be a man. Wei Gongqi wanted to cry, but no tears came out. This was a great humiliation to him. It was even more humiliating than what he had accumulated in his life. Especially when he was inexplicably crippled by Enchanting. Wei Gongqi felt very wronged by being called a perverted pervert. He didn't do anything worse than a beast, but he had become such a scapegoat. He even had the thought of dying. Well done. Dustless was full of smiles. He had never realized that Enchanting was so cute. Pang pang pang. A series of messy footsteps suddenly sounded. Dustless raised his head and saw an untimely figure. Her panicked face stared at the blood on Wei Gongqi's crotch in disbelief. She then looked at Enchanting, who had a crazed expression and suddenly understood something. Jiu Wumi. This fellow really likes to meddle in other people's business. Dustless frowned inwardly. He was rather dissatisfied with her appearance. He then lowered his head and pondered for a moment. In the end, he rushed out from the darkness. Not only that, Saber also rushed over. Alice and Phil also did the same. Wei Gongqi's heart-wrenching scream just now was too heart-wrenching. What a pity. I let go of a chance to torture Wei Gongqi. Sigh. Dustless smacked his lips and sighed in pity. Looking at Saber's humiliated appearance, he knew that she would not let Enchanting off so easily. After all, although Wei Gongqi was a rotten person, he was still Saber's master. If Enchanting was allowed to leave, Saber's dignity would also be damaged. Chapter 1709. Qi, are you alright? Alice Phil came over and asked with concern. Looking at the blood that stained his pants, her face was filled with embarrassment. Alice Phil, don't worry. Qi has only become a eunuch. It's not a big deal. You know that he has strong willpower. You don't have to comfort him. He will be able to pull through. Dustless's weird voice rang out. Damn it. No matter how strong your willpower is, you can't take this lying down. Why don't you try? Don't just stand there and talk. Qi, who was already furious, was enraged by Dustless's words. He roared at Dustless, have you caught the despicable person who plotted against me? I must tear him into pieces. The person who plotted against you. Saber revealed an ashamed expression and said apologetically, Master, I'm sorry. The mysterious person who plotted against you. When I rushed over, there was no trace of anyone else. He might have run away. Run away. Useless fellow. Glancing at Saber coldly, Wei Gongqi did not say anything. Saber frowned and looked at the furious Wei Gongqi. She was also dissatisfied and said angrily in her heart, if you didn't come out on your own, how could this have happened? Now, other than the problem, you are blaming others. Disgusting. Unknowingly, Saber started to have bad intentions towards Wei Gongqi. She felt that she had to explain to him. The corner of her mouth twitched. Just as she was about to argue with Wei Gong Qixi, a thumb blocked Saber's lips. Saber, you are just a heroic spirit. No matter how you explain, it will be your fault in the end. Dustless shook his head, indicating to Saber that there was no need to say more. The furious Wei Gong Qixi would not listen. It was just a waste of time. But this fellow is really despicable. I have told Wei Gong Qixi time and time again not to act alone. Now that there is a problem, he was even turned into, glancing at Wei Gong Qixi, Saber's face turned slightly red, and the words that were about to come out of her mouth turned into a smile. Hee. Dustless smiled maliciously and cleared his throat. He looked at Wei Gong Qixi and encouraged him. Qixi, isn't it just having your balls crushed? I believe that you can definitely handle it. The voice that filled the entire sky lingered in the void for a long time, as if it wanted to spread throughout the entire world. You bastard! Wei Gong Qixi's face turned green when he heard this. How could such a thing be said so casually? Staring at Dustless, who was shouting at the top of his lungs, as if he wanted the whole world to know that he was a eunuch, Wei Gong Qixi wanted to strangle this bastard Dustless to death. Why didn't you use a loudspeaker to publicize it? Saber, get rid of Berserker and his master, Yudong Yayan. Remember, don't kill this brat. I want to repay this brat 100-fold and let him understand my pain. His eyes flickered with the light of revenge as Wei Gong Qixi roared crazily. Because of Yudong Yayan, his self-esteem had suffered a serious blow. If he didn't get rid of him, he wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. I will bring you back for now. Alice Phil glanced at Wei Gong Qixi with a complicated gaze and carefully supported him. Looking at that crazy face, Alice Phil gradually distanced herself from Wei Gong Qixi. I'm sorry, Jiantong Yayan. Your usefulness ends here. Dustless and Saber blocked in front of Yudong Yayan and thought to themselves, since you will die no matter what, let me give you a dignified death, so that you won't be captured alive by Wei Gong Qixi and receive the same punishment as him. You bastard! Yudong Yayan's expression froze. Looking at Dustless's calm face, he asked, shameless, don't tell me you want to, swoosh swoosh swoosh. Before Yudong Yayan could finish his words, a ray of light suddenly attacked. Dustless's broad hand directly grabbed Yudong Yayan's head. Woo woo woo, woo woo woo. Yudong Yayan's mouth was also blocked by Dustless, making it difficult for him to speak. Kill you, I must kill you. How dare you betray me? Yudong Yayan roared crazily in his heart. His scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent. He didn't expect Dustless to be so dustless. He had clearly said that he would take care of Wei Gong Qixi, this shameless bastard. Who would have thought that this bastard would actually betray him now? Putting aside the previous agreement, with his current attitude, he even wanted to kill Yudong Yayan to silence him. He didn't want him to tell the truth. Your eyes are really scary. In fact, you don't have to hate me so much. Dustless leaned close to Yudong Yayan's ear and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I think you should thank me, your savior. I will take care of Kuei, Ling and Sakura in the future. Farewell, Yudong Yayan. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless's strength exploded. He also increased the strength of his face that was grabbing Yudong Yayan's head. Caw caw caw. One could hear the sound of bones breaking. That pair of big hands crushed the skin on Yudong Yayan's face. Blood kept flowing. No, it was too much to say that it was blood. The skin on his cheeks burst. Other than blood, there was also a large number of fat worms flowing out. Bastard, I can't let this guy go so easily. Yudong Yayan was furious. He clenched his fists and roared in his heart, Berserker, tear this guy into pieces. Tear him into pieces. Ow 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 ow. Receiving Yudong Yayan's order, Berserker roared towards the sky and attacked. Chapter 1710. Berserker's strength was actually not bad. Among the heroic spirits, his stats were considered outstanding. However, he was not very lucky this time. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Berserker attacked Dustless with his sword. The sharp edge of the sword slashed down horizontally, carrying the anger of Enchanting. It looked like he was going to cut Dustless in half. Clang clang. A dull roar spread out, and a spark appeared in an instant. Berserker's fatal attack was also blocked. A delicate and seemingly weak figure stepped forward without hesitation. At the critical moment, Saber's Excalibur blocked the dangerous cold light. Ah, what a scary heroic spirit. Dustless said in a frivolous tone, but his face was expressionless. Leave this guy to me. Berserker gives me a feeling of déjà vu. Saber stared at the black-armored swordsman in front of her cautiously and suspiciously. She actually had some impression of his seemingly messy swordsmanship. Do whatever you want. Just don't let this guy run away. Dustless gave Saber a reassuring look, and his teasing gaze fell on Enchanting again. Clang 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 clang. Under the night sky, two agile and vigorous figures fought with all their strength. Every time their swords collided, there would be dazzling sparks. King Arthur, Berserker always let out a vague and hoarse roar from his throat. It was as low and terrifying as a beast. What a troublesome guy. Saber forced Berserker back with both hands. Every time she slashed, she used all her strength. The person who was in the way is gone. Dustless saw this and sighed heavily. He immediately looked up and stared at the angry Enchanting. He smiled unscrupulously. Don't show such an angry expression. If you don't control your emotions, the worms in your body will consume you faster. I will be very sad if you die. After all, we are allies, Yayan. Humph, put away that hypocritical smile of yours. If you were betrayed and abandoned like trash after being used by others, how would you feel? Enchanting asked. You are such a cunning person. I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Really? Then I'll make sure you can't even be a ghost. Dustless snorted indifferently. Then, he sneered and said, if I crush your body and soul, I'll see how you're going to take revenge on me. Poochie. 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 Tong Yayan clenched his teeth when he heard Yi Chen's words. The skin all over his body burst open. Hundreds and thousands of fat teeth opened up and bit towards Yi Chen. A deathbed struggle. When Dustless saw this, he glanced at the group of engraved worms and rolled his eyes. The fire that was not there started burning without any sign. Tens ho. In the blink of an eye, the fire annihilated all the insects. Not even the residue was left. They evaporated into thin air. Not only that, under the control of Dustless, the black ominous fire spread to the head of Enchanting. Ah, it hurts. What kind of will-o'-the-wisp is this? It couldn't be extinguished. D***it. Enchanting screamed in pain and fear. He fell to the ground and rolled violently. He tried to put out the fire on his body, but the reality was too cruel. Not only did the fire show no sign of extinguishing, but as time went by, it gradually became bigger and bigger. In the end, it swallowed him whole in an instant. This fire is called Tensho. You want to extinguish it? How stupid you are. Didn't I just say that I'm going to burn your soul? Dustless said in a cold tone. He did not have a good impression of Enchanting. Enchanting said that he liked Isaka Kue, but the person who killed Isaka Kue was actually this guy. He was a real hypocrite. Your soul has been burned by Tensho. I'll see how you won't let me go even if you become a ghost. Looking at Enchanting, who was screaming in pain, Dustless had a pleasant expression on his face. Enchanting Yayan's screams, which sounded like he wanted to die, sounded very funny to Dustless. After about a minute, Enchanting Yayan's screams gradually died down. The night sky returned to its peaceful state. Looking up at the sky, the stars in the galaxy were shining brightly. The night sky was beautiful. There shouldn't be any problems over there, right? As far as his eyes could see, in the dark forest, there were two shadows fighting against each other. Every move and every collision would cost the lives of both parties. Forget it. I'm bored anyway. Let's go take a look. Dustless was humming a tune. His skinny body walked past Enchanting Yayan, who was now a mummy. He walked straight to the place where Spare and Berserker were fighting. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. With a gentle breeze, Enchanting Yayan's body was completely eroded. He turned into black powder and disappeared with the wind. His name was completely erased from the world. Berserker has quite a lot of mana stored in his body. Even though Enchanting Yayan, the master, is dead, this guy can still continue to fight with Saber. However, it's only a matter of time before he loses. Even though the master was dead, Sarvant would not disappear in a short period of time. As long as he had enough mana in his body, it would not be a problem for him to last for a few days. Once his magic power was exhausted, Sarvant would vanish and evaporate. Chapter 1711. Clang! 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 Even though Master was dead, Berserker was still as ferocious as ever. He and Saber were engaged in a fierce battle. Berserker seemed to have realized that he would soon leave this world. Not only did he not weaken his attacks, but he also kept the remaining magic power in his body and unleashed it all. Instead, he became more and more courageous as he fought. He used up all of his magic power. His obsession with Saber was so deep that it felt like he wanted to drag her down with him. With Saber's arrogant personality, even if I helped her once, she would not appreciate it. Instead, she would blame me for being a busybody. Are all the ancient people so stubborn? What a troublesome problem, girl. Staring at Saber with a headache, Dustless sighed. For Saber, the so-called dignity of a knight should not be trampled on. It was more important than anything else. Even if she died, she would not care. But, looking at Berserker's heavy armor, Dustless warned, Saber, put some distance between you and that guy for now. Dustless, you, Saber frowned. She felt an unknown power flowing in Dustless's body. She angrily stopped him and said, Dustless, even you want to trample on my dignity as a knight like Wei Gong Kisi. However, Dustless was silent. He ignored Saber and stared at Berserker with his cold eyes. Path of Destruction, Black Coffin. Swoosh. Swoosh. The black light that filled the sky bombarded Berserker's body. He was immediately pushed back. Berserker's tough armor also had visible cracks. Dustless, you. Seeing such a scene, Saber was not happy. Instead, she was furious. For the first time, she was filled with dissatisfaction and resentment towards Dustless. Saber, if you want to punish him, it's not too late to see the situation. Pointing at Berserker's direction, Dustless said, this guy's true colors are about to be revealed. True face. Saber was stunned when she heard that. She looked at Berserker and saw that the cracks on his armor were getting bigger and bigger until they spread all over his body. Saber's gaze was fixed on Berserker's body. Attacked by the black coffin, the steel armor gradually peeled off. Saber's beautiful eyes suddenly shrank, revealing a familiar face. Lancelot. Why are you Berserker? Saber's mind went blank as she stared at the face. Roar. King Arthur, after Dustless destroyed his impenetrable armor, Berserker's consciousness became much clearer. Although he was still very violent, he was not as crazy and reckless as before. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, Berserker only hesitated for a moment before attacking Saber with his relic. His speed was so fast that even Dustless could only catch a glimpse of a blurry shadow. Seeing that Berserker was about to approach Saber while the latter was still in shock, Dustless had no choice but to interrupt the match and help Saber. 10,000 Celestial Attraction. A strong gravitational force suddenly appeared, and Berserker's body suddenly became sluggish. His body could no longer move forward as Dustless's huge hand ruthlessly sucked him in. Damn you! Interrupting a battle between knights, your crime, is enough for me to behead you 10,000 times. The armor on his body collapsed and disappeared. Berserker's eyes were filled with madness. He was no longer stuttering like before. Instead, he was speaking very fluently. His eyes were clear and bright as if he had found his reason after going berserk, even if it was only for a short moment. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dustless suddenly interrupted him, and Berserker was furious. Following the inertia of the gravitational force, his relic was aimed at Dustless's head. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The tip of the sword was extremely tricky, and there was no way to avoid it. It seemed like he could only take the attack head-on. Hee. Seeing Dustless's tragic death, Lancelot Berserker's face showed a gloomy arc. He laughed ferociously like a demon. Clang 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 clang. Sparks flew in the air, and Berserker's right hand that was holding the relic was numb. He thought to himself, could it be that his body is made of diamond? How could it be so hard? Berserker looked at Dustless in confusion, and his jaw almost dropped. Gulp. Berserker's throat rolled as he looked over. His precious artifact was right on top of Wu Chen's forehead. It looked as if his head was about to be chopped off. However, who would have thought that a thumb would be as indestructible as a meteorite, blocking the divine sword that could cut through iron like mud? That's right, it was just a finger. Are you kidding me? This guy is not a god, how could he block my relic with just a finger? Berserker's face turned pale, and when he was about to attack, Dustless's cold and warning voice was heard. Berserker, your opponent is not me, and I am not interfering in the battle between knights. Dustless said, and stared at Berserker's crazy eyes. Of course, if you insist on treating me as your enemy, then I will be a qualified enemy and cripple you. If you did not interrupt my battle, Arthur's head would have been taken by me. How dare you say that you did not interrupt the battle between knights? Ridiculous. Berserker sneered. A battle between knights? How dare you say that? Dustless looked at Berserker with disdain, and mocked. You knew that Saber was in a daze, but you attacked her at all costs. Is the battle between knights so dirty? Berserker's face turned red, and he shouted angrily, she was distracted, and she deserved to be killed. She can't blame anyone else. You are not fit to call yourself a knight. In my eyes, you are a treacherous villain. Dustless sneered, and he hated Lancelot. This guy used to be one of King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, and Saber trusted him so much that she gave the task of protecting the Queen to Lancelot. Then, a very melodramatic scene happened. Lancelot and Saber's queen fell in love. It was precisely because Saber had absolute trust in Lancelot that she gave him such an important task. However, who would have thought that Lancelot was so shameless that he seduced the queen at that time? Although Saber forgave Lancelot in the end, in Dustless's eyes, this kind of behavior was unforgivable. He deserved to be cut into pieces 10,000 times. You should be thankful that you have a king like Saber. If it were me, Gilgamesh, or the Conquest King, you would have long been skinned alive. Now, you still have the face to blame others. Scum. Chapter 17:12. UB** starred. Berserker's face turned red after being scolded by Dustless. His eyes were filled with uncertainty as he stared at Dustless's face. His surging murderous intent could not be concealed and burst out like a tide. If you want to die, then come at me immediately, trash. Dustless continued to attack unceremoniously. Just looking at this idiot made him feel unlucky. If Dustless were Saber, he would definitely cut this D*M*B* starred into 8 pieces and feed him to the dogs. I'm afraid that I hate people like you the most. Seeing that Dustless was going to continue attacking him, Berserker could not bear it anymore. Finally, he could not continue to be a coward. Otherwise, he would be scolded to death by Dustless. Berserker, who could not stand it any longer, charged at Dustless. Humph! Dustless snorted when he saw this. When he was about to give Berserker a fatal blow, Saber once again blocked Berserker without giving him any face. This guy is my prey. Saber stood in front of Dustless and said resolutely, Lancelot, I need to deal with him personally to end all the grudges between us. What a stubborn woman. Dustless withdrew his oppressive aura. He also understood that he could not stop her. Saber's stubbornness gave him a headache, and it was not suitable for him to intervene. After all, this was a personal grudge between Saber and Lancelot. Before leaving, Dustless suddenly stopped and looked at Berserker. Then, he cautiously said, You'd better be careful. In the castle of the Ahrensburg family. At this moment, one of the best doctors in Dongmu City was gathered in Wei Gong Kissy's room. After all, Wei Gong Kissy's balls were crushed by Jiantong Yayan. This was definitely explosive news. When will his injuries recover? He still has a lot of work to do. Jiuyu Meimi saw the doctor coming out of the room and was relieved. Treatment. With all due respect, you should prepare for the funeral of that Mr. Wei Gong Qixi. Qiyu Meimi's face was full of expectation. Who would have thought that the doctor would mercilessly give her an answer that would make her collapse? He immediately turned his head and wanted to leave, leaving behind Qiyu Meimi who was possessed. Please wait a moment. Are you saying that you are going to prepare for Qixi's funeral? After a while, Jiuyu Meimi, who had regained her senses, was greatly shaken. Her mind was in a mess. Wasn't it just crushed, that thing? Even if it was completely cut off, it wouldn't be so exaggerated. Cough, cough, cough. Mr. Doctor, please don't be in a hurry to leave, I still want to ask more questions. Jiuyu Meimi stared at the doctor and asked awkwardly, It shouldn't be that fatal, right? Cut's life force and willpower are both very strong. Willpower. That kind of tenacious spirit also depended on what kind of illness it was. This patient still has a wound on his abdomen. Although it is not fatal as expected, it has seriously weakened the patient's physical condition. Especially the condition of the gentleman on the bed is special. It has caused serious psychological trauma and obstacles. It will be very difficult for him to recover. I don't know how long he can hold on. If he can't hold on, maybe he will die in a few days. The doctor shook his head and then showed an expression of helplessness. After nagging for a while, he left. Although some diseases could be cured, the psychological trauma was too serious. He can't be saved. Why is Wei Gong Qixi so useless? Did he grow up without doing anything? Wu Chen, who had just rushed back, was also greatly shocked when he heard this. He originally only wanted to give Wei Gong Qixi a blow, but he didn't expect that the blow would go too far, leaving this guy with a serious psychological barrier. It sounded like he would die immediately if things went wrong. It seems that this time, if Wei Gong Qixi dies, then who will provide Saber's magical power? Dustless frowned secretly. Now that Wei Gong Qixi is like this, it is difficult for him to survive, let alone provide Saber's magical power. According to the doctor's meaning just now, if Wei Gong Qixi can get out of the psychological trauma, there will be no problem for him to recover, but if he gives up, it is only a matter of time before he dies. Should I become Saber's master? A thought flashed across Wu Chen's mind as he muttered to himself. Although he was only a heroic spirit now, he was only a fake. I can let Wei Gong Qixi take the initiative to transplant the command seal to me. Dustless's Sharingan flashed a strange light, and he smiled gloomily. This step is actually very simple, it can be completed with Genjutsu, it is really not a big problem. The key problem is Saber, if she is not willing, Dustless will be useless even if he becomes her master. Saber believes in the knight's path. It is impossible and unrealistic for her to betray Wei Gong Qixi for no reason, unless Wei Gong Qixi does something that Saber can't tolerate, then she can get rid of him. Forget it, consider yourself lucky, for the time being, help Wei Gong Qixi live for 2 more days. After careful calculation in his heart, Dustless finally chose to let Wei Gong Qixi live for a while. He could use wood release to slow down Wei Gong Qixi's illness. Of course, it was impossible to let him recover completely. Dustless only hoped that this guy could live for 2 more days. It would be best if he could hang on for a while. Even if he died, he had to wait until the end of the Holy Grail War. Chapter 1713. In Wei Gong Qixi's room. Alice Phil sat beside the bed and stared at the haggard man. She didn't know why, but she wasn't as sad as she used to be. The heart-wrenching pain was no longer there. Now, all that was left was pure worry. It was similar to the worry between friends. Ever since Dustless and Saber appeared, her relationship with Wei Gong Qixi gradually went in the opposite direction. It developed further and further until today. Especially because of the relationship between Takumi and Osaka and Rin and Osaka, the two of them had a rare quarrel. Creak. The tightly closed door was gently pushed open. Dustless walked in quietly. "You're here." Alice Phil's face outlined a forced smile. It looked extremely forced. Her delicate snow-white face was even paler than usual. Her spirit was also very dispirited and weak. "Alice Phil, don't worry. If you're so sad, he wouldn't want to see it." Walking in front of Alice Phil, Dustless patted her shoulder and comforted her gently. "Alice Phil, go out and rest for a while. Leave this to me for the time being." Alice Phil didn't pay attention to him. Instead, she suddenly attacked Dustless. "Alice Phil, you're..." Dustless was dumbfounded. He looked at Alice Phil, who was close to him. A strange fragrance entered his nose along Alice Phil's face. Suddenly, he felt that his waist was bound. His chest was also squeezed by her proud cleavage. Looking down, Alice Phil suddenly hugged Dustless. "I'm so scared." After being silent for a while, Alice Phil said softly with tears in her eyes, "Maybe soon, I'll leave this world and rush to that unfamiliar world, that world." Dustless frowned slightly and asked, "Are you talking about the world after people die?" "Don't worry, you're so beautiful. Even those little ghosts of the King of Hell will be charmed by you. They can't bear to let you die." "Poochie." Alice Phil suddenly laughed. She threw a charming glance at Dustless and said, loquacious, "Sometimes, I wonder if you're still alive. What you do and what you think are completely different from those hero spirits." "Really? Do you really want him to live that much? That way, you two can have a rendezvous like this, right?" An extremely oppressive and gloomy voice that was as indignant as a volcano suddenly sounded. "This is... You're awake." Dustless and Alice Phil were startled. They looked towards the source of the sound, and to their surprise, it was Wei Gong Qixi, whose face was filled with black lines. He stared at Dustless and Alice Phil ferociously. Seeing this, Alice Phil was overjoyed. "TSK, you're awake. I was worried, you're worried. It's all bullshit." Wei Gong Qixi's eyes widened. He was so angry that he vomited 3 liters of blood. He glared angrily. He didn't expect that Alice, Phil and Dustless would get together right after he fell ill. Furthermore, it's fine if the two of you are having an affair, but you're even having an affair in my ward. Doing this kind of thing in front of me, is that exciting or fulfilling? Preposterous. How can you bully me like this? Too shameless. The two of you. You only feel a sense of accomplishment when you do this kind of thing in front of me. I suddenly woke up. Did I disturb the two of you? May I ask if you need me to continue pretending to be unconscious? Wei Gong Qixi stared fiercely at Dustless. His stomach swelled up, and it looked like he was about to explode. Tisk, you're mistaken. The truth is not what you think. Seeing this, Alice Phil hurriedly let go of Dustless. Her face was red as she looked at Wei Gong Qixi's red cheeks. She couldn't help but feel ashamed deep in her heart. At this moment, Dustless suddenly stood up and didn't give Alice Phil a chance to explain. Wei Gong Qixi, don't you know? You're about to die. I'm helping you take care of Alice Phil. You should be thanking me. Especially now that you're just a eunuch. Moreover, you're about to die soon. You can die in peace. Leave Alice Phil and your daughter to me. Wu Chen said righteously. Moreover, he pulled Alice Phil into his arms in front of Wei Gong Qixi. Moreover, he even kissed her delicate thin lips even more fiercely. Poochie. Seeing this scene, Wei Gong Qixi was momentarily stunned. In the end, he couldn't hold back the fire in his heart. He spat out a mouthful of old blood and fainted. Dustless, what are you talking about? Alice Phil hurriedly pushed Dustless away. Looking at the unconscious Wei Gong Qixi, she hurriedly ran out. Moreover, she was extremely anxious as she called for a doctor. TSK, Wei Gong Qixi, a scum like you is really lucky. Looking at Alice Phil's disappearing figure, Dustless was rather envious of this guy's luck with women. Men die for those who understand them, women dress up for those who love them. Now that Alice Phil was so anxious, it meant that although she and Wei Gong Qixi were estranged, she still hadn't forgotten Wei Gong Qixi. Forget it, I'll temporarily help you maintain your life for a few days. At least before this Holy Grail war ends, you definitely can't die. Walking in front of the sickbed, Dustless's palm emitted an emerald glow. Using the would release method, he injected a large amount of life force into Wei Gong Qixi's body. What a sin, this brat better not die from anger because of me. Looking at the blood-red sheet, Dustless secretly scolded Wei Gong Qixi in his heart. This brat is too weak. I only took a little liberties with your wife, is there a need to be so sad? Anyway, you have a mistress, Jiu Mamie. With her, you don't have to worry about your future life at all. Chapter 17-14. Dustless was talking to himself. If Wei Gong Qixi heard it, he would definitely jump up in anger. Those words were just too unpleasant to listen to. However, looking at his current state, he is not qualified to continue being Saber's master. I'm afraid he would not even be as good as me. What a useless piece of trash. After checking the condition of Wei Gong Qixi's body, Dustless realized that he had gone too far. Wei Gong Qixi was both mentally and physically exhausted. His mental power was severely overdrawn. How long he could live would depend on his body. In short, I can't let you die now. Dustless threw the complicated emotions out of his mind. He increased the life force of would release into Wei Gong Qixi's body and slightly healed his wounds. After a few minutes, the fainted Wei Gong Qixi opened his eyes again. Dustless. Why would you be so kind as to save me? What is your goal? Wei Gong Qixi turned his head to look at Dustless's face and asked, what is your plan? I don't believe that you are so great. Idiot who doesn't understand human nature, get it straight. This is to save you. When you speak, remember that the person you are talking to is the benefactor who saved your life. Wu Chen emphasized the word to remind him. The benefactor who saved my life. Wei Gong Qixi was choked by those words. His face twitched as he put on a fake smile and said, then. How do you think I should thank you? Give you Alice and Phil? Do I need you to give me that? Dustless sneered and said, after you die, everything will be mine. Your wife and daughter will be mine. Veins popped out on Wei Gong Qixi's face. He bit his tongue and roared, you, this, brat, don't go too far. After this, Holy Grail War ends, you will die without a doubt. You don't have to worry about that. After sweeping a glance at Wei Gong Qixi, Dustless muttered to himself for a moment before revealing his intentions. Wei Gong Qixi, since you won't be able to hold on for long, why don't we do this? Transfer your command incantation to me and I can help you live for a while. You want my command spell? Wei Gong Qixi was startled, and asked without hesitation, you want to continue fighting as Saber's master? What a joke. Ha ha ha. Wei Gong Qixi let out a disgusting sneer as he rolled around on the bed in an exaggerated manner. You, a servant, actually want to become a master and continue fighting? What a joke. Insensible idiot. Upon seeing this, Dustless's expression turned cold, and a sinister arc flashed in his eyes. The chakra that was channeling into Wei Gong Qixi's body suddenly stopped, and the chakra materialized, turning into a sharp knife that pierced into Wei Gong Qixi's skin. Puchi. It hurts, you bastard, how dare you do this to me? Wei Gong Qixi felt the abnormality in his abdomen, and cold sweat flowed down his forehead due to the pain. Don't get it wrong, I don't want to become Saber's master yet. This is just an early negotiation, and the purpose is to tell you that when you can't hold on any longer, I will become Saber's master. Dustless said with certainty. If a trash like Wei Gong Shiro could become master, why couldn't he? It was simply too funny. Furthermore, Wei Gong Qixi didn't understand Dustless's situation. In reality, he didn't die, and he wasn't a true heroic spirit. You're on your own now. Noticing that Wei Gong Qixi's body had regained some color, Dustless didn't overdo it. If it wasn't for Saber, it would be better for this eyesore to die. Remember, I don't need to snatch anything from you. After you die, everything will be mine, haha. Dustless let out a laugh that made Wei Gong Qixi feel nauseous. His eyes stared at Dustless who was leaving. If the heavens could feel his wish, Wei Gong Qixi was willing to die together with Dustless at all costs. Damn it, I definitely won't allow this to happen. After Dustless left, Wei Gong Qixi's eyes flashed, and a ruthless expression flashed across his face. Alice Phil is the vessel on my back, if she can die for me, she should feel honored. Anyway, what awaits her is death. I definitely can't accept her becoming Dustless's mistress, and I definitely can't tolerate Alice Phil betraying me. On the bed, Wei Gong Qixi screamed crazily. Alice Phil was the vessel of the Holy Grail, and her ending was death. No matter who obtained the Holy Grail in the end, she would definitely die. In any case, Alice Phil once said that she would die for me. The guilt on his face disappeared in an instant, and Wei Gong Qixi revealed a straightforward expression. Until now, he was still dreaming of borrowing the power of the Holy Grail to become the partner of justice. However, little did he know that Wei Gong Qixi's crazy mutterings had all fallen into Alice Phil's ears. Alice Phil, who was standing outside the door, pursed her lips. She was flabbergasted, as if she didn't expect Wei Gong Qixi to be so heartless. Alice Phil had once said that she was willing to die for Wei Gong Qixi, but the taste and essence of everything had changed. Stupid man like a pig. Where there are people, there will be fighting, and when there is fighting, there will be darkness. When there is darkness, there is only one way to completely eradicate the darkness of this time and become the so-called partner of justice, to exterminate the human race. Glancing at Alice Phil, who was standing in front of Wei Gong Qixie's bedroom door with a complicated expression, Dustless couldn't help but feel emotional. When a person's material life was satisfied, there would be spiritual enjoyment, and inexplicable dreams would be born. For example, Wei Gong Qixie was like this. When he woke up from his dream, it was already too late. Chapter 17:15. Wei Gong Qixie was so heartless. Without a doubt, the one who suffered the most was Alice Phil. While the former was scheming, the latter was definitely sincere. Bang! 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 At the same time, the sound of heavy footsteps could be heard. Dustless looked out of the window and saw Saber's figure. Her blonde hair was slightly messy and covered in sweat. Her expression was also pale and weak. Looks like the victor has been decided. Lowering his head, he saw that Spare was covered in blood. Dustless couldn't find any wounds on him. It was probably all berserkers, and Saber was only slightly exhausted. This is bad, Dustless frowned. If it was in the past, it would have been fine. However, Wei Gong Qixie was beaten into a eunuch by Jiantong Yayan. His life was in danger. If it was not for Dustless's help, Wei Gong Qixie might not even be able to survive. Now, he even had to provide Saber with her mana. We have to end this Holy Grail war as soon as possible. In the battle with Berserker just now, Saber is probably exhausted as well. If this drags on, the situation will be even worse for us. A hint of decisiveness appeared in his eyes. Dustless secretly clenched his fists. If he ended this war in advance, all the problems would be solved. Originally, Dustless wanted to go back to his room to rest. However, he resolutely walked towards Alice Phil, who was in a daze. Alice Phil, I have something to tell you. I plan to go tomorrow. Before Dustless could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Alice Phil's sobbing. How can Wei Gong Qixie be so heartless? Alice Phil's tone was filled with endless fatigue and sadness. She used to call him Qixie. Now, she was calling him by his name. It was not hard to tell that there was a big problem between the two of them. There's nothing to be shocked about, little brat. Dustless smiled and advised, everyone has their own way of thinking. There's nothing perfect in this world. It's impossible to create a perfect person based on your logic. Creating a perfect partner based on yourself is only limited to fairy tales. However, that bastard Wei Gong Qixie is too heartless. Dustless changed the topic and criticized Wei Gong Qixie without holding back. After sorting out his thoughts, Dustless continued, Alice Phil, I plan to deal with Iskandar the Conqueror of Rider tomorrow and try to end this Holy Grail war. If this drags on, it's not good for Sabe's life. No problem, I think so too. With Cutter's current state, it's impossible for him to continue helping Saber. In that case, we can only rely on you, Dustless. Alice Phil looked at Wu Qin with an apologetic look. She lowered her head in shame. There's nothing to apologize for. You, on the other hand, Dustless looked at Alice Phil with a complicated expression. She was the one who got hurt in the end. Just like what Wei Gong Qixie said before, Alice Phil was just a carrier of the Holy Grail. She would die no matter what. I want to end this war as soon as possible. At the same time, a cold voice suddenly came from the room. Lowering his head, he saw Wei Gong Qixie in his pajamas. Even though he tried his best to remain calm, and his cheeks regained some color, deep in his soul, he could still feel the exhaustion of his soul. Is this guy made of iron? He's so confident even though he's been turned into a eunuch. Dustless slandered in his heart. He did not say these words to Wei Gong Qixie. If he did not do it well, this guy would be hit hard again. Tomorrow, Dustless will fight with Ryder. As for Saber, she will stay behind to protect me and Alice Phil to prevent Yen Feng Chile and his archer from sneaking up on us. Time flew, and the next morning came in the blink of an eye. When Saber heard that they were going to fight the Conqueror King Iskandar, she requested to fight together with Dustless. However, she was rejected by Dustless. The reason made Saber speechless. She could only stare at him. Do you want to interfere with the battle between knights? It was because of such an inexplicable sentence that Saber sensibly stayed in the castle to protect Alice, Phil, and Gongon Kisi. Even though Dustless and Iskandar were not knights, it was still an unforgivable act to recklessly intervene in other people's duel. After thinking about it carefully, Saber also acquiesced to Dustless's idea. Alice Phil and Wei Gong Kisi really needed someone to stay behind and watch over them. This place should be enough. The thin figure stood on top of a majestic bridge. Dustless stared at the sea in the distance. This was the place where the first battle between the heroic spirits took place. Boom boom boom. Dustless stepped on the huge steel pipe of the bridge. Loud rumbling sounds were heard as the sound gradually spread to the entire city with the help of the sea breeze. This was a form of provocation. It meant, I'm right here. If you don't like it, come at me. At a remote location. The Conqueror King, who was eating with Wilbur Velvet, suddenly raised his head. When he heard the faint sound, he laughed with fighting spirit. Did you hear the horn of battle? Someone is challenging me. Iskandar clenched his fists. His eyes were like torches, shining with a dazzling light. He said loudly, as a king, it's ridiculous to avoid a battle. Idiot, this could also be the sound of some construction site under construction, Wilbur Velvet refuted. There's no construction site near your house. Moreover, the source of this sound is at least a few kilometers away. If some construction site is really under construction, do you think it's possible to travel so far? Wilbur Velvet was silent. There was only one kind of person who could do such a thing, heroic spirits. Chapter 17-16. Rider, who is the person who issued us a challenge? Is it Archier or Saber? Or is it the 8th heroic spirit? That fellow is the most terrifying. I really don't wish to encounter him. When the 8th heroic spirit was mentioned, Wilbur Velvet's body trembled uncontrollably. He felt a chill down his spine and could not help but shiver. Ha ha ha. To me, it doesn't matter who it is. The Conquest King, who was riding the divine might wheel, let out a hearty laugh. He was fearless as he stared at the faint silhouettes on the bridge in the distance. His rough face was replaced by excitement. Don't you find it delightful to have a battle with heroic spirits from different eras? The Conquest King's face was filled with excitement as though he had been injected with chicken blood. He nearly jumped up and down. You. Forget it. I knew that this would be the outcome. In any case, it's up to you. Wilbur Velvet sighed and ignored the Conquest King. There was no need to talk nonsense with a battle maniac. To be honest, be it Archer, Saber, or the 8th heroic spirit, I don't have enough chances of victory. Especially the unfathomable 8th heroic spirit that you mentioned. That fellow's noble artifact is similar to Archer's, but its might and proficiency seems to be even more powerful than Archer's. The Conquest King was vexed. This was the first time he heard that a noble artifact could be used by two people. That fellow must have been sent by the heavens to deliberately go against us. Wilbur Velvet grumbled in frustration. He was filled with complaints about Dustless. This Holy Grail war was ridiculously strange. There had never been an 8th servant. Furthermore, the most unacceptable thing was that the sudden appearance of an 8th heroic spirit could be ignored. Furthermore, it was unbelievably strong. In a 1v1 situation, it was almost invincible. Didn't Toshiomi Inaka say that he wanted to join forces with us? Why didn't you agree to it in the past? Now that that fellow is dead, there's no one to join forces with. Wilbur Velvet's complaints were all directed at the Conquest King. Bang! However, the Conquest King gave him a slap and snapped, "Fool. There can only be one final victor. Sooner or later, there will be a time when we part ways." "Is he here?" The Conquest King sure made an arrogant entrance. "However, it's not bad to prepare a funeral for you. After all, we were acquaintances." Looking up at the sky, Dustless had an unfathomable smile on his face. Looking up, one could see lightning flashing and thunder rumbling in the void. Dark clouds were rolling, and the cries of beasts resounded through the starry sky like heavenly thunder, spreading to the ends of the world. A majestic monarch descended like the ruler of the world. The activity coming out of the brain is really scary. Wherever the Conquest King's divine might wolf passed, lightning would streak across. Thick bolts of lightning boomed without restraint, as though they had the power to destroy the world. But, then, the smile on Dustless's face disappeared, and he muttered to himself, "Although flowers are pragmatic and the ending is a bit monotonous, I can still find some good fun. So it's you, the eighth heroic spirit." Boom boom boom. The Conquest King's divine might will landed on the ground, producing a loud rumble. It carved out a charred trench on the ground and stopped not far in front of Dustless. "Give it your all, Conquest 5. This will be the final battle. Don't disappoint me with your performance." Dustless's hand flashed, and a golden greatsword instantly took shape. "Ha ha ha. I couldn't ask for more." The Conquest King laughed out loud when he saw this. He glanced at Web Velvet, indicating for him to get off the carriage and leave. Web Velvet looked at the Conquest King worriedly. After hesitating for a moment, he tactfully left the divine might wheel. After all, he was just a burden. "You won't attack this fellow, right?" the Conquest King asked in a deep voice as he pointed at Web Velvet. "Don't compare me to someone like Wei Gong Qixi. A master who kills his enemies. It's extremely comical. Only someone like Wei Gong Qixi who fears his enemies would be so despicable." Dustless snorted coldly in disdain. His words were filled with endless mockery and disdain. He scoffed at Wei Gong Qixi's methods. Assassinating the opponent's master and forcing Sarvant to surrender was Wei Gong Qixi's specialty. For example, in the original work, Lancer was tricked to death by Wei Gong Qixi. His master was captured, and in the end, Lancer was ordered to commit suicide. Before the battle begins, forgive me for speaking bluntly. I have one last question to ask you. If you remain silent, this king will not be able to die in peace." The Conquest King lowered his gaze and stared at Dustless. He did not dare underestimate that thin body of his. He asked in a deep voice, "You seem to have more noble artifacts than Archer. That lightsaber in your hand should be at least A+ grade. My last question is, who are you?" The Conquest King could not hold back his curiosity and asked with anticipation. It was fine to lose, but if he died without knowing who killed him, it would be too tragic. This fellow doesn't know the meaning of curiosity killing the cat. Suddenly recalling a famous saying from his previous life, Dustless's gaze turned complicated. His thoughts turned in reverse. He had lived for hundreds of years, and the number of titles he had been given was too many. Conquest King, it's just a name. Is there a need to be so persistent? Even if you know, it's meaningless. Dustless muttered. It would be great if everyone could part on good terms. Asking for a name after death, how boring. Chapter 1717. Meaningless. No. There's great significance. This question not only perplexed the Conquest King, but also left Sarvant and Master perplexed. Dustless's method of existence was too strange and evil. It was beyond everyone's understanding. Dustless clearly did not have any mana at his disposal, but his strength was so astounding that it made everyone's eyes pop. There were even some bored people who spent a lot of time rummaging through all the historical myths, but still could not find a hero that matched Dustless. For example, Yen Fong Kaylee and Toshimi had done so, but they could not find a powerful hero that matched Dustless's identity. Who exactly is this guy? Perhaps only the heavens know. Ryder's Conquest King Iskandar was not the only one who was puzzled. In fact, his master, Wilbur Velvet, was also deeply perplexed. Looking at all the myths in the world, there seemed to be no one with abilities comparable to Dustless. There was only Gilgamesh. Although he and Dustless could use the ability of the Gate of Babylon, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the so-called Gate of Babylon was actually just one of Dustless's many abilities. Is that so? Are you sure you want to know about my past? He glanced at Iskandar, the Conqueror King, in astonishment. His dustless and deep eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. He stared at the Conqueror King for a moment before he said calmly, "Conqueror King, have you heard of the story of Pandora's box?" Pandora's box. The Conquest King was stunned when he heard that. He immediately looked at Dustless in astonishment and frowned. Are you trying to say that you are also a monster in Pandora's box? You can understand it that way. Dustless nodded and immediately smiled. If you know about my long life, I'm worried that your combat power will decrease. In the past, when I fought with a god, she was in such a situation. Those who know about my past are unable to face me with their full strength. This guy, Wilbur Velvet's brows furrowed deeply when he heard that. A clear, chuaned character could not be concealed. This guy is as unfathomable as a god. Ha 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 ha. Is your past enough to scare others away? Interesting. The Conquest King laughed heartily when he heard this. Following that, he stared at Dustless and said, "That's what makes it interesting. I wish to know of your past even more. It's not just me. Everyone wishes to know of your past. The same goes for Archer. I've already vaguely guessed his identity, the ancient king of Uruk, Gilgamesh, known as the Hero King. What an untactful man." Dustless sighed helplessly and said casually, "I don't have a fixed title. In the past, I was revered as a god and feared as a devil. I destroyed countless worlds, killed countless gods, and created many worlds. If you don't mind, you can be my opponent, a moody and boring god." In the end, Dustless came to such a conclusion. Hee. God. I've long been aware of that. The Conquest King was not surprised when he heard that. Instead, the doubts in his heart were relieved. Just as he had said, when facing Dustless, the Conquest King had the resolve and determination to challenge a god. In fact, it was not just the Conquest King. The heroic spirits that had fought with Dustless all treated him as a super godlike monster. That's for the best. Since you aren't attacking, I'll just bully the weak. Dustless revealed a stern gaze. Seeing the Conquest King remain motionless as though he was preparing for something, Dustless took the initiative to transform into a flash of light and pounced at the Conquest King. In fact, the identity of a god was nothing much. For example, the Hero King of Archer, Gilgamesh, had 2/3 of a divinity. He was a heaven-defying existence that was half human and half god. However, compared to Dustless who had dominated countless eras, Gilgamesh was far inferior. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In an instant, he appeared in front of the Conquest King. Shock flashed across his eyes as he cursed inwardly, "This guy's speed is as fast as teleportation. I can't see any trace of him at all." Even so, the Conquest King still waved his sword in front of him. "Your reflexes are not bad, but your speed is still too slow. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourselves for being too sad. The heavens have chosen me to participate in this war, and all of you heroic spirits are destined to be mere foils. Vanish, Conquest King. In the void, Dustless's soft sigh rang out. The light pierced through the Conquest King's body first. Poochie. The golden greatsword left a thick wound on the Conquest King's body. As Dustless used too much strength, he could even see the organs hidden in his body. Poochie. Having suffered an unprecedented injury, Iskandar spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned as pale as snow, and bean-sized beads of sweat uncontrollably rolled down his coarse face. Despicable guy. Looking down at Dustless, who was much shorter than him, the Conquest King's face was filled with indignation as he said hoarsely, "You are indeed extraordinary. Just a single move was enough to heavily injure me, a king. Am I getting old? My reflexes have become so sluggish that I couldn't even catch your shadow." The Conquest King smiled bitterly. His face was filled with shame and indignation. He never expected Dustless to be so terrifying, especially with his speed. He couldn't even catch a trace of him, and by the time he realized it, he had already been heavily injured by Dustless. Relax and close your eyes. Your opponent is the flash person who ate the flash fruit. His body has turned into light, and he can unleash an absolute speed like light. Losing is inevitable. Chapter 17-18. Cough 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 cough. The Conquest King spurted out blood as he looked at the ghastly wound on his chest. A weak smile appeared on his coarse face as he propped himself on the ground with his greatsword to prevent himself from falling. He could not help but lament, "I'm destined to have no fate with the Holy Grail. My dream of conquering the world once again will go down the drain." However, immediately following that, the Conquest King's voice rose several times as all the magic power in his body erupted. The void began to change at an accelerated rate as the area turned into a desert without any warning. So. A cold wind suddenly blew in the pitch-black night sky. The world before his eyes suddenly became much brighter. Large amounts of yellow sand were mixed in with the strong winds that brushed past his shoulders. Is this an inherent enchantment? If I recall correctly, it's called the King's Army. This formation is truly extraordinary. As expected of the invincible army that swept through Europe, Asia, and Africa in the past. Dustless nodded his head in praise. The world before his eyes changed as time and space changed. He had arrived at an unfamiliar world. The formation of the world before him was even more exaggerated. There were densely packed figures that were as numerous as locusts. All of them were prostrating on the ground. It was a spectacular sight. Furthermore, all of them were kneeling on one knee as they looked at the Conquest King with deep respect. The soldiers had no regrets in their eyes as they stared death in the face. It was a shock that came from the depths of one's soul. Huff huff huff, sand danced in the air as he stepped on the barren desert. Dustless was filled with many emotions. The Conquest King's attitude of being as high as the heavens was truly admirable. The sand danced in the air as it was formed from the corpses of his enemies. You're merely a withered willow, yet you're still able to display the scene of a hegemon that leaves one in awe. There's no harm in admitting that you're one of the few kings. Dustless spoke frankly as he looked at the army with indifference. His magnanimous eyes showed no fear. Victory or defeat will be decided here. The Conquest King rode on a black steed with a shiny mane as he endured the intense pain in his abdomen. He used all his strength to raise the long sword that represented an all-army attack. The enemy is a transcendent being from the universe. He's worlds apart from us mere mortals. But even so, I want him to witness the bravery of my army. Following that, the Conquest King raised his long sword and slashed down. The sword was pointed at Dustless as the deathly still desert began to tremble. Ow 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 ow, the deafening roar deafened everyone. It was like an earthquake. Visible cracks appeared in the desert and gradually spread out. Boom, boom, boom. The Conquest King and his army charged forward, leaving a mess wherever they went. Due to the terrifying commotion caused by the countless people charging forward, even the desert caved in an exaggerated manner. Unable to withstand the pressure, the desert began to crack. Swish! Swish! Countless arrows and spears were fired at the same time, covering the entire sky. There was no way to dodge. The entire desert world was being ravaged by these arrows. Not to mention standing under the sun, even if they were to drill into the ground, they would probably be shot into a hornet's nest. Bang, bang, bang. Around Dushless, there were all kinds of arrows and spears piled up like a mountain. Enveloped in the golden light, Dustless was unable to penetrate the golden energy defensive wall, no matter how dense the attacks were. Let me show you something interesting. The golden double-faced Kansusanu tightly enveloped Dustless. Furthermore, just like Dustless himself, the double-faced Kansusanu formed the same hand seals as Dustless. Celestial Obstruction Quaking Star. The somewhat bright void was suddenly covered by a shadow. The strange situation caused the charging army to be stunned. They all raised their heads to look into the depths of the void, including the Conquest King and his soldiers. All of them widened their eyes. The super meteorite that covered the entire army slowly descended. As far as the eye could see, there was only the barren and deathly still meteorite. The entire world had been taken over by it. No wonder this fellow dares to call himself a god. This strength is fully deserving of it. The Conquest King's lips trembled as he looked at the falling meteorite. The battle intent in his heart had completely collapsed. What a joke. Thinking back to how he had been so lawlessly rejoicing in his victory over Dushless, a self-mocking smile appeared on the Conquest King's face. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. This was too embarrassing. Boom! 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 As the meteorite slowly descended, the Conquest King's army suffered a heavy blow. Not only did the army suffer heavy losses, the entire desert world was mercilessly attacked. The meteorite summoned by Dushless had turned it upside down. The conventional astroseismometer was only 2 meteorites, but this time, in order to express his respect for the Conquest King, Dustless had summoned dozens of meteorites. The super meteorites that fell to the ground smashed the desert into smithereens. Caw caw caw. With a few crisp sounds, the inherent barrier that the Conquest King had painstakingly constructed shattered like a mirror, returning him to the dark starry sky from before. As for the Conquest King himself, he had long disappeared. He had been buried by the astroseismometer. The Conquest King is also dead. If that's the case, the Holy Grail can appear. Dustless's body landed on the ground as he lowered his head in contemplation. The situation in the original work was the same as it was now. Excluding himself, only Saber and Archer were left. Logically speaking, they did not meet the requirements to summon the Holy Grail, but the Holy Grail had still appeared unexpectedly. This is bad. Alice Fair is the vessel of the Holy Grail. Suddenly thinking of the most thorny problem, Dustless could not help but raise his eyebrows. Should he kill Alice Fair with his own hands? He could not do such a thing. At the same time, Alice Fair was an indispensable vessel. Let's wait for the time being. After pondering for a while, Dustless could not make up his mind. Alice Fair had treated him quite well. Both of them were flesh and blood. It was impossible and unrealistic for him to cut her off so easily. Chapter 17-19. As for Web Velvet, Dustless completely ignored him. Whether he killed him or not, it did not change anything. Furthermore, he had previously promised Conquest King to spare him. Inside the Arinsbellen family's castle, Just after Dustless left, two uninvited guests arrived. One of them was the Hero King, who was covered in sparkling gold, and the other was the new master of sparkling gold, Yen Fengili. Furthermore, the Hero King and Yen Fengili had engaged in an intense battle with Saber and Wei Gong Qixi. The development was identical to the original work. Although Saber had tried her best to fight the Hero King, with the battle nearly destroying the Arinsbellen family's castle, there was still a huge gap in strength. Spare was ultimately suppressed. If Saber had Avalon, she might have barely been able to put up a fight with Sparkling Gold. She might even have been able to defeat the Hero King, but the chances of relying on Excalibur to defeat the Hero King were 0. The outcome was still a tragic defeat for Saber. While retreating, Sparkling Gold had even stabbed Wei Gong Qixi, worsening his injuries. He could die at any moment. Furthermore, he could no longer provide magic power to Saber. Wei Gong Qixi could not even protect himself. Other than that, there was another terrible matter. Alice Fair had been captured. Those two bastards sure know how to pick the time. While I was challenging Ryder, they actually took the initiative to sneak attack the Arinsbellen family's castle. I was the one who was careless. I thought that the Hero King would not stoop to such despicable acts of sneak attacks. I overestimated him. In the ruins of the Arinsbellen family's castle, the majestic castle of the past had vanished into thin air. It was completely reduced to history. In a dilapidated room that could barely provide shelter from the elements, Saber was lying in bed with a pale face. And in another room, Wei Gong Qixi was in the same state. His situation was worse than Saber's. He had been beaten up by Yen Fengili and had been dealt the final blow by the Hero King. His body was on the brink of collapse. Now, there were only 4 people who could still move: Kwai and Osaka, Rin and Osaka, Sakura Tama, and Dustless. Dustless was sitting on the sofa, rubbing his temples in distress. His mind was in a dead end, and all the bad things were overlapping. His head was dizzy and he had a slight headache. Instead of sitting here doing nothing, why don't you hurry up and save Alice Field? A crisp child's voice rang out. Dustless looked up and saw Rin Enben with his hands on his hips. What does a kid know? Dustless rolled his eyes. I really don't understand why Sister Alice Field didn't activate the command seal. That way, I could have asked for your help, Rin Enben muttered to himself in confusion. That's because the command incantation is useless against me. It's too difficult to bind me. Dustless shook his head. The source of the command incantation was actually the Great Holy Grail. Everything had its own limit. It was too difficult for a mere command seal to bind him. Alice Field's command incantation seemed to be able to control Dustless, but in reality, it was just a facade. Just like how Dustless didn't need Alice Field's magic, the two had nothing to do with each other. Even if Alice Field activated the command incantation, Dustless wouldn't be affected, let alone control him. Dustless, Rin's words make sense. Archer is harmful to Alice Field. If you don't save her, your heroic spirit won't be able to bear the consequences. Your body will disappear in a few days. Saber suddenly opened her eyes. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. She was very tired. Dustless used Mokutan to heal her wounds. It was enough to show how fierce the battle with Archer was. It's useless. Just now, I already felt that the vague practice with Alice Field was cut off. I'm afraid that Alice Field has been killed. I guess she has now become the carrier of the Holy Grail. Dustless said calmly. He could feel that the inextricable relationship with Alice Field was cut off in an instant. Bang! Saber smashed the quilt excitedly and whispered unwillingly, "Did we lose just like that? It's really unpleasant to lose to that guy." "No, it's not over yet." Dustless shook his head mysteriously. "So what if Alice Field is dead?" In fact, after hearing that Alice Field was captured, Dustless's complicated thoughts were as calm as water. In this way, he could end Alice Field's miserable fate. After the Holy Grail War was over, he could use Outer Path, reincarnation innate technique, to resurrect her. Both of us are about to be eliminated. Cutter is heavily injured, and it's too difficult to continue fighting. The mana he provides me is very little, and I'm seriously exhausted from the battle with Archer. I can feel that I will disappear soon. Spare's face was filled with loneliness and desolation. This was the first time she tasted defeat. We didn't lose, Dustless said, and then stared at Saber with his eyes like torches. You can devour my soul. That way, you can continue to maintain your body and your mana will be increased. Souls were the nourishment of Sarvant. The mana loss could be made up through souls. Of course, there was also a method called mana replenishment, but Dustless was too embarrassed to say it. Devour your soul? Absolutely not. Saber heard that and felt warm in her heart. She gave a grateful look, but she still refused firmly. Sorry, I can't do that. You're really stubborn. Dustless shook his head again. So what if she devoured his soul? Dustless was quite confident in his soul. Not to mention that he had the body of a real ten-tailed beast. When he was in the Grim Reaper world, he had devoured a large number of souls. Not only that, he had also devoured the Soul King, which was the amalgamation of souls. Dustless's soul was almost infinite. Even if he was devoured by Saber, it did not matter. After all, he was backed by the sea, and his soul was inexhaustible. Chapter 17:20. You can't even hold on anymore, yet you want me to devour your soul. Saber did not know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless's master, Alice Fair, had already fallen. As a Sarvant, he would disappear sooner or later. What soul was there left for Saber to devour? That's not a problem. Don't worry. I'm sure you've noticed that my way of existence is a little special. I don't need magic to maintain myself. Even if my master dies, my body will not disappear. Dustless said calmly. This was the advantage of being a traveler. That does seem to be the case. You've not been using magic all this time. It's a special power that I've never seen before. Saber remained silent. To be honest, she had thought about Dustless' way of existence before. It was indeed strange and unique. He did not need to use magic at all. His attacks were also completely different from magic. The two had nothing to do with each other. Is that really okay? What if something unexpected happens? Even if you regret it, it'll be too late. Saber's tone was high, and her haggard face was solemn as she reminded him. If I die just because someone absorbed some of my soul, then I can only blame myself for being unlucky. Dustless was all smiles. His casual tone was full of confidence. Phew. I really don't understand what you're thinking. Since you've decided to do this, I won't hold back. Saber saw Dustless's determined gaze and did not want to waste any more time. Saber was not the kind of person who would waste time. Especially now that she was pressed for time, there was no time for her to hesitate. Can you guys leave first? Saber looked awkwardly at Akui Enosaka, Rin Enosaka, and her mother. Saber's voice was very soft. It was rare for her to be so shy. The weirdest thing was that Saber's face was flushed. Hey, are you trying to take advantage of her? You're using such a shameless method to help Saber recover her magic. That's despicable. A disdainful voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned his head and saw the mischievous Rin Enosaka. She was staring at him with an ambiguous expression. Ha! Isn't it just devouring a soul? What's there to be embarrassed about? Besides, we're all heroic spirits, so there's no need to be so alarmed. Dustless didn't even think about it and asked without hesitation, also, quickly put away your wretched eyes. Dustless was inwardly puzzled. Although Rin and Osaka was only a few years old, his thoughts were truly unflattering. Hee, you'll know soon enough. Rin and Osaka patted Dustless's shoulder with an expression that said, "Take care of yourself." Then, he left in high spirits. Rin and Osaka wasn't the only one who had a strange expression on his face. Even Kue and Osaka had the same expression. Did I make a mistake somewhere? Noticing that everyone was looking at him strangely, Dustless lowered his head and asked himself. His knowledge of magic was pitifully little. Even a brat like Rin Enbin knew more than him. Dustless only knew that there were two ways to recover one's mana. One was to replenish one's mana, and the other was to devour other people's souls. Bang! With a dull thud, only Dustless and Saber were left in the spacious room. Saber suddenly sat down beside Dustless. Her face was flush red, and she was abnormally shy. Is there something wrong? Saber. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but ask loudly, "It's just absorbing souls, it's not like..." Dustless almost blurted out the words replenishing mana, but at the crucial moment, he quickly stopped himself. Don't you know the exact process? This time, it was Saber's turn to be shocked. She stared into Dustless's eyes, her clear eyes unreadable. In a trance, she seemed to be able to see through Dustless's mind. It doesn't look like you're lying. Saber gritted her teeth and took advantage of Dustless's carelessness to push him down, her entire body lying on top of Dustless's body. Plop! Caught off guard, Dustless was pressed to the ground. He stared blankly at Saber. He didn't expect her to suddenly attack him. Staring at the red lips so close to his, he seemed to have understood something. No wonder Ling and the others made such expressions. So this is how Saber wants to absorb my soul. No wonder she's so embarrassed. Dustless suddenly understood. If he guessed correctly, Saber might be absorbing his soul through mouth-to-mouth contact. Closing her eyes, Saber endured the discomfort in her body and sealed Dustless's mouth. Soft. Tastes good. Dustless's mind was in a daze. He didn't expect Saber to counterattack. At the same time, he felt a strange force enter his body from Saber's mouth. It didn't have a physical body, and it was invisible to the touch, but it was real. It kept pulling at his mind and devouring the majestic soul in Dustless's body. This guy is really a freak. After about 10 seconds, Saber's eyes widened as she stared at Dustless, who was lying flat on the bed. At first, she was only absorbing Dustless's soul slightly, but later, she was shocked to find that the boundless soul was vast and boundless. Saber finally understood what Dustless meant when he said that no matter how much water one took from the sea, there was an endless supply. She worked harder to suck Dustless's mouth, and Saber's mana was quickly restored. Chapter 1721. The mana in Saber's body was quickly recovering, and it was increasing rapidly. Her original mana had recovered, and it even showed signs of reaching its peak. Saber's complexion also recovered, and her pale face flashed with a healthy redness. After a long time, Dustless and Saab finally parted their lips. No, you can't be a heroic spirit. You have such a terrifying soul. Even if you devoured the souls of all the humans in the world, you still wouldn't be able to reach such a level. Dustless, I'm getting more and more curious about your background. You really are an enigma, Saber, you're already a heroic spirit. Why do you care about your past life? Let go of those trivial matters. Even if you know about my background, it won't do you any good. In short, if I get the Holy Grail, I'll give it to you. Dustless moved a little and took a few deep breaths. When Saber suddenly covered his mouth just now, he almost suffocated. Is there something wrong with my ears? Are you planning to give me the Holy Grail to fulfill my wish? Saber sighed, and there was a rare hint of bitterness in her voice. Dustless, I always feel like you're hiding a lot of secrets from me. As allies, we should know each other well. TSK, TSK. How fragrant. But then again, I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. A look of infatuation flashed across Saber's face. Wu Chen's careless words made Saber embarrassed. Your attitude and appearance are a little different, however. Saber did not get angry. Instead, she pouted like a little girl and continued to complain, compared to an ordinary woman, I prefer you to treat me like a servant. Cough, cough, cough. Hearing this, Dustless coughed twice and stared at the cheap red Saber. He couldn't help but lament, Saber, your side as a knight is very charming, but as a woman, it's also like a soul-sucking poison. Thank you for your compliment, but I really can't feel happy about it. Saber was unmoved. There was not even a ripple on her face. She was very calm. From the moment she pulled out the sword and the stone, she had forgotten that she was a woman. Now it's about time to find trouble with Gold Shinny. Dustless stood up and stretched his body. A sinister look flashed across his eyes. Golden glitter. Are you talking about Archer? After Saber was taken aback, her fair chin gently nodded a few times. She suddenly recalled the gorgeous attire of the Hero King. He was definitely worthy of the title of Golden Twinkle. At this moment, in another direction. Is this the Holy Grail? It's different from what I imagined. The Hero King and Yen Fengili stood side by side. The former looked at the golden Holy Grail in front of him with disappointment. It was embedded with all kinds of gorgeous and resplendent gems. Furthermore, a crimson liquid similar to fresh blood was flowing out of the Holy Grail. However, the Hero King and Yen Fengili's performances were mediocre. The two of them did not feel much as they looked at the Holy Grail that was filled with liquid. Not only were they not happy, they even felt somewhat defeated. Especially the Hero King, who had a bored expression. I don't care about this disgusting thing. Even if I have it in my collection, I will throw it into the trash. The Hero King's tone was filled with disdain towards the Holy Grail that everyone yearned for. Yen Fengili was the same. He looked at the Holy Grail calmly. He was not happy, but if he was disappointed, there was also a faint joy. It was quite contradictory. Oh, so this is what the Holy Grail looks like. This disgusting smell, is it all from the liquid in the Holy Grail? An indifferent voice descended from the sky. A ray of light flashed in the void. Looking up, they saw Dustless hugging Spare as bright as a shooting star. They looked at the mysterious black liquid with curiosity. It looked like black mud and was filled with the smell of blood. To be honest, the smell was really uncomfortable. It was the complete opposite of the legendary universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail. In most people's eyes, the Holy Grail was a holy and noble existence like an angel. This bastard. He actually dared to hug her without my permission, completely ignoring the Holy Grail. The Hero King looked up at the sky. When he saw Dustless hugging Saber, his blood-red eyes immediately flashed with a ferocious shock wave. All this while, the Hero King had treated Saber as his exclusive property. Although he had never said it out loud, he had subconsciously taken Saber for himself, believing that she was his possession. Now, his possession was being held by someone else, and it was an enemy he found most displeasing to the eye. The Hero King's pride immediately shattered to the ground. TSK, is this guy really the Hero King? Is he really the oldest Hero King of humanity? With such a narrow-minded mindset, his character is also unflattering. Dustless's line of sight happened to see the gloomy archer, the hero king. The flames in his blood-red gemstone eyes burned fiercely. Dustless naturally knew what this guy was thinking. The hero king's fragile pride had once again been dealt a heavy blow by Dustless and Saber's public display of affection. It was a mental blow that could not be ignored. After all, Dustless was hugging Saber. The two of them flying through the void gave off a romantic feeling. They were like a celestial couple, extremely intimate and harmonious. And Saber was like a little bird leaning on Dustless's chest. The majestic Night King of the past was like an obedient little girl. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.